Everybody kept telling me that hard work beats talent, and every single one of them was a filthy liar. I had the proof laminated. It was called my report card. Life energy level 8.6, 3 years of training, no movement. My classmates were pulling ahead a whole point a semester, and I was sitting at 8.6 like it was a bus stop, and the bus was never coming. In a martial arts high school, a number like that isn't a grade. It's a diagnosis. Meanwhile, our TV was busy worshipping a teenager. Luo Jianfeng, 17, estimated level 14, the hero rising among the young. They ran his highlight reel while we ate dinner, this kid demolishing training dummies in slow motion and the anchor cooing about him like he'd personally invented breathing. My dad watched with his chopsticks frozen halfway to his mouth. "Now that," he said, "is a real genius." "Great, thanks, Ba." "Love that for me?" My mom kicked him under the table, which I appreciated. She was always on my side, even when my side was objectively losing. She'd say things like, "Ah Chen is a late bloomer," which is the thing you say about a kid who is not, in fact, blooming at all. We weren't rich. Ba drove deliveries, Ma did the books at a hardware shop, and half of what they earned went into tuition for a boy who was carving stone with a dull knife. That's what my training felt like. Every night I'd go through the 9 standard moves in my room, the same 9 moves, sweating, straining, and the needle never moved. Dull knife. Cold stone, 0 shavings. That night I trained anyway because what else was I going to do, watch more Luo Jianfeng? I ran the forms until my shirt was glued to my back, and somewhere around move 7 I felt it again. Not power. Resentment. This flat, ugly certainty that I was going to spend my whole life at 8.6, while the universe handed out fireworks to kids with the right last name. And that was the exact second it happened. Something unrolled inside my head. I don't have a cleaner way to say it. Behind my eyes, in the quiet space I'd been told was my sea of consciousness, a scroll of ancient bronze simply, appeared. Unrolled itself, started glowing like it had been waiting 3 years for me to get angry enough to notice it. Martial arts diligence record. Current realm beginner 97.3%. Assessment, foundation meager. Foundation meager? Cool. My own cheat opened with an insult, but I wasn't reading the insult. I was reading the number because I had never in my life seen my progress as a number, and there it was, 97.3, sitting there like a save file. I threw a punch, a normal textbook punch, the first of the 9 moves, the way teacher Lai drilled it. 97.3 ticked to 97.4. I stood in the middle of my tiny bedroom with my fist still out, and I think my soul briefly left my body. Let me explain what 2 months of my life had looked like before this. 2 months stuck at 97.3, except I didn't know it was 97.3 because normal people don't get a percentage. They get a shrug and keep going. 2 months of carving cold stone. And this thing had just told me one clean punch was worth 0.1%. So naturally I threw another one, nothing. Practice interrupted, in angry little red letters, okay. Okay, so it's picky. I threw a third, tried to copy the first exactly, and the red letters came back. It took me maybe 40 minutes of throwing punches like an idiot in the dark to understand what my new friend actually wanted. It didn't reward effort. It didn't care that I was sweating. It rewarded the move being correct, truly correct. Elbow, hip, heel, breath, all of it stacked in the one narrow slot where the technique is actually the technique and not just a guy flailing with intent. Every punch that hit that slot plus a 10th. Every punch that missed it, even by a hair, interrupted. Red. I had spent 3 years being told to feel when a move was right. Feeling is for people with talent. I didn't have talent. What I had, apparently, was a machine that would tell me, punch by punch, exactly how wrong I was until I stopped being wrong. That first hour I got 7 good ones. 97.3 to 97.6. In 1 hour I'd done more than the previous 60 days combined. I went to bed and slept like the dead and woke up feeling like I'd been plugged into a wall overnight. Turned out that was a bonus feature, too. The thing didn't just track my recovery, it sped it up. I didn't tell anybody. Obviously, you don't walk into a martial arts high school and announce, "Hey, the universe gave me a spreadsheet." You just quietly start being less terrible and let people draw their own conclusions. The next morning at the training hall, teacher Lai ran us through forms. Lai Guang. Big man, buzz cut, one bad step short of being a full martial master, and the only teacher in that building who ever looked at me like I was worth the electricity. He barked the counts and I ran the moves, except now I was cheating in the most boring way imaginable. Every time he shouted, "Correct your shoulder," or "Sink the hip," I'd watch the panel flicker in the back of my mind and learn precisely what correct meant, down to the 0.1%. By the end of that session, I was at 97.8, 14 clean reps in one class. My desk mate, Chen Fei, level 8.7 and blissfully unbothered by ambition, offered me half his braised pork at lunch and asked why I looked so happy. I told him the pork was really good. It was. Everything was good that week. Then I hit a wall because of course I did. 99.8% and stuck. New message. Bottleneck. Seek external stimulation or a profound insight, which is the panel's polite way of saying, "Congratulations, you've done the homework, now do the thing that can't be homeworked." I sat with that for days. External stimulation I understood, take a beating, take a pill, get shocked into the next tier. But I didn't have money for pills and I was in no rush to get beaten. Profound insight was the scarier one because insight is exactly the stuff talent is made of, and we've established how I feel about talent. So on Saturday I did the only thing I could think of. I went and watched Teacher Lai train, alone early before the hall filled up, and I didn't watch his moves. I'd memorized his moves. I watched the space between them, the way his weight arrived a half beat before his fist did, the way the whole thing had a rhythm, a charm, some private music that my correct but dead punches had never once played. I went home and I tried to steal that music, not the shape of the punch, the song of it. And on maybe the 30th try, the panel did something it had never done. Your action contains a subtle hint of intention. Efficiency plus 50%. 99.8 cracked open. I broke through to getting started, and I stood there breathing hard with my hand shaking because for the first time the machine hadn't just measured me. It had caught me doing something a machine wasn't supposed to be able to teach. I didn't hear Teacher Lai come in. I don't know how long he'd been standing in my doorway. I trained at the hall that morning, and he doubled back for something. He was staring at me like I'd sprouted a second head. "Say that again," he said quietly. "What did the panel just say to you?" I hadn't said anything out loud. I froze. He crossed the room in 3 steps and grabbed my shoulder, and his voice dropped to almost nothing. "You grasped a hint of true intent, at the body-forging stage." He said it the way you'd say someone had walked on water in front of you. "Boys twice your level train 10 years for that spark and never see it. Do you understand what that is?" I did not at that moment understand what that was, but I understood the look on his face. It was the look my dad had aimed at a teenager on television, and now, for the first time in my life, somebody was aiming it at me. "It's the mark," he said. "The moment you actually enter the field instead of standing at the gate copying the sign. It comes from pressure, from combat, from the edge of life and death." He let go of my shoulder like he'd remembered to be a teacher again. "It does not come from a quiet room in a nothing school from a boy sitting at 8.6. He looked at me hard. "So how?" I gave him the only answer that wasn't a lie. "I've been practicing," which was true. It was even the whole truth. I just left out the part where practicing had recently become a competitive sport with a live scoreboard. He exhaled, decided not to push, and did the single most important thing anyone did for me that year. He believed me. "Raise your Kai and blood," he said. "Push that level up before the entrance exam. Get past 10 and I can open real doors for you." He paused at the door. "You've got something, kid. I don't know what it is yet." "But you've got something." "Yeah, Teacher Lai, I've got something." It was 97.3% of a bronze scroll. It insulted me on sight, and it was about to turn a delivery driver's kid into a problem the entire province would have to learn how to spell. The province, though, would have to wait. First, I had to survive Monday. Monday was live sparring. Real contact, no restrictions except don't kill each other, and the whole class in a ring around 2 people who'd been assigned to hit one another. I got drawn against Lin Huan. Level 9.2, half a point over me, a D-rank grappling art called Spiritual Snake Hand, and a reputation for being fast and slippery and fond of joint locks. When they read our names, I heard somebody in the crowd snort. Somebody else said out loud, "That's not a match, that's a chore." They meant it would be a chore for her. She came at me like the rumors promised. Quick, low, hunting my wrists, and for the first 30 seconds she owned me. She had experience I didn't, and she used it, hurting me around the ring, snapping at my joints, keeping me a half step behind. The crowd was already relaxing into the ending they'd predicted. But here's the thing about a slippery opponent who lives on speed. Their foundation is usually made of tissue paper. I could feel it every time we touched. Her technique was sharp and her base was hollow, and my base was the one thing in my life I'd built brick by brick with a machine screaming, interrupted at me every time I got lazy. So I stopped chasing. I planted. I let her come. She overcommitted. Went for a wrist lock she wanted too badly, lunged a hair past her own balance, and for one clean instant her center was mine. I gave her the mounting crushing fist. Heel, hip, spine, the whole chain firing through one bow stance thrust, every ounce of foundation I owned poured into a single point. It landed on her guard, and it didn't matter that it landed on her guard. She left the floor. 5, 6 steps back, sat down hard, blinked at the ceiling. The hole went dead silent. Then it detonated. Teacher Lai didn't celebrate. He used it. To Lin Huan, he said, "That is what skill without foundation gets you, a beautiful house on no ground." Then he turned to me, and just so I didn't get a big head, he added, "And you, solid base, and that's all it is. A steadier opponent walks through you. Don't confuse one lucky floor for a finished building." Fair, rude but fair. He kept me after class. Asked what my plan was. Told me about a winter break intensive, minimum level 9.5, run by him and a teacher named Zhu Lei, the good stuff, the stuff that made careers. And then he did something that still makes my chest tight when I think about it. He handed me a metal box. Inside were 5 vials of E-grade Kai and blood potion. I knew what those cost. 30,000 yuan. Half a year of what my family lived on, sitting in a little box in my hands. An investment, he said, like it was nothing, like he hadn't just handed a delivery driver's kid half a year of a household. Take 1.5 hours before you cultivate. Don't waste them. I tried to give it back. He gave me the specific look large men give you when refusing is not on the menu. So I bowed instead, deep, and I made a promise to the floor because I couldn't say it to his face without my voice breaking. I would not waste this. I would not waste him. Then winter break started, and I found out what my machine could really do when you fed it. 5 in the morning, first day, house asleep. I drank 1 vial, and my blood caught fire. Not a metaphor, a flood of raw energy came up through me like someone had opened a valve I didn't know I had, and my whole body was suddenly loud with it. So I did the only responsible thing with a body full of fire. I started throwing punches. The standard moves were reflex now. I didn't have to think correct. My body knew the slot. And the counter started climbing, and it did not stop. 15 good reps, 32, 61. Somewhere past 70, my arms turned to concrete, and my lungs started filing complaints. 78, 89. I bit down on my own lip until I tasted copper because the pain gave me something to push against. 97, 98, 99. 100. Practice makes perfect. For every 100 valid cultivates completed, you will receive 1 epiphany. A bell rang, not in the room. In my skull, deep and enormous, like something ancient had rolled over in its sleep. And then a torrent came in, not information, not a list, but understanding. This warm flood of clarity that took everything I'd been grinding at blindly and simply switched the lights on. My realm number jumped, not a tenth, not a percent. It leapt from where I'd clawed it to 20.5% in one breath. I sat on my bedroom floor at 5 in the morning with my hands shaking and did the math. 1 epiphany was worth more than the potion that made it possible. 100 correct punches, and the universe paid out like 100 and put it in my account. And that is the exact moment the joke of my entire life clicked into place. Everybody wanted a spark. Everybody chased insight, waited on talent, prayed for the lightning. And here I was, a kid with no talent and a scoreboard, and my superpower, my genuine, world-breaking, province-terrorizing superpower, was that I would do the same punch 100 times in a row until reality got tired of arguing with me. I wasn't a genius. I was a guy who does his homework. It just turned out homework done exactly right, 100 times a day, is the most broken build in the game. The next morning I tested it. No potion. Just me and my aching arms because I had to know whether the machine loved me or just loved the drug. 60 reps before breakfast, 100 by the afternoon. The bell rang again. Realm to 31.8. Epiphany worth 9%, clean, no chemicals, just a boy and a stubborn number. That was the day I stopped worrying about whether I had talent. I had something better. I had a subscription, and I had never once missed a payment. I burned through his 5 vials over the break, one every 3 days, faster than the safe pace, because safe is for people who aren't in a hurry, and I had 18 years of being nobody to make up for. 100 cultivates a day, an epiphany a day, a potion feeding the fire every third dawn. The number that had refused to move for 3 years started moving like it was embarrassed about the delay. New Year's Eve, I tested at the school pod and came home for dinner sitting on a secret. Level 9.8, from 8.6 in half a winter break. I told them over the dumplings. My mom put her chopsticks down very carefully, like they might break, and then she cried. Just sat there at our little table and cried with a dumpling halfway to her mouth, and my dad, the man who'd called a TV teenager a real genius 3 weeks earlier, my dad couldn't get a word out. He just kept nodding. Finally, he said, "Teacher Lai, we have to thank Teacher Lai." And I said, "Yeah, we do," and I didn't tell them that thanking Teacher Lai was going to be a lifelong project. What I didn't know was that after I went to bed, my parents had their own quiet conversation. I found out later how it went, more or less. They had savings, 30,000 yuan, the whole cushion, the thing you don't touch, the thing that stands between you and the month everything goes wrong at once, and they decided to touch it. I woke up the first morning of the new year and there were 2 more vials of Kai and blood potion on my desk. Real ones. The good kind, the kind that costs a season of a family's caution. There was a note under them, my mom's handwriting, and it didn't say anything clever. It said, "Ah Chen, Happy New Year, keep it up." I stood in my room and held 2 little glass vials that my mother and father had bought with the money that was supposed to save them, and I understood something about my family that I'd somehow missed for 18 years. We didn't have talent. We didn't have a famous name or innate ancestors or a villa full of masters. What we had was each other, and the willingness to spend down to nothing on the slim chance that one of us made it out. That was the whole family fortune. That was the creed. Nothing but hard work, so we work harder. I did not make a joke about it. Some mornings you don't. 6 days later, I broke past level 10. 10.1. My Kai and blood cracked a shackle I'd been leaning on my whole life, and my bones popped like knuckles the size of my forearm, and I called Teacher Lai before I'd even caught my breath. He came to the school on his day off to see it for himself, and when the pod confirmed 10.1, he stared at the readout for a long time. Level 10 isn't just a number. It's the gate. Past it, the world opens, body transformation, the higher training grounds, and the thing I actually wanted. Star Marshal Battle.net. Battle.net is the great equalizer if you want the inspirational version. It's a full immersion combat network built so that a poor kid from a nothing school can fight, train, and rank against anyone in the Federation without a family legacy behind him. He pulled strings, got the municipal armed police sign-off, and got me access. One catch: I was a minor until October, so I couldn't hide behind an avatar and a fake name like the adults. I went in as my own face, my own name, Lin Chen, restricted to the beginner zones, a real teenager with a real record that anyone could look up. Fine by me. I wasn't planning to stay anonymous. Inside, he offered me a choice of 5 visualization methods, the mental arts, the ones that build your spirit instead of your body. Wave, green wood, flowing wind. Great sun, mountain moving. He nudged me toward mountain moving. Defensive, patient, built around divine intent, and he said with a small smile, "It suits a boy who's about as easy to shove off a spot as an actual mountain." I took it. The method was exactly as pleasant as it sounds. You visualize a mountain in your mind, a small one, and then you erode it. Move it. Grind it down grain by grain using nothing but mental force, which drains your spirit like pulling water uphill through a straw. My first session, I managed to pry one rock loose, and it nearly gave me a nosebleed. But my machine had a surprise. It didn't only measure my body. The panel flickered and posted a new line, mountain moving method, plus 0.1%. It could quantify the inside of my own head. It could score me imagining a rock. At that point, I stopped being surprised by anything the scroll did. 3 days of grinding a mountain to gravel behind my eyes, and I shattered the last stone, and something in my mind that had been a wall my whole life just wasn't anymore. Then I made the mistake of letting he test my spirit rank. A fresh level 10 student runs a spirit rank around 5, 5.5. 6 is we should keep an eye on this one. The pod took my reading, and he, who was in the middle of a cup of tea, choked on it, openly, had to put the cup down and cough into his sleeve. 7.5. He looked at the number, looked at me, looked at the number. The instrument's off. Sit back down. We'll run it again. We ran it again. 7.5. All that willpower I'd built biting my lip bloody at rep 99, night after night, it turned out doesn't just live in your arms. He cleared me for real combat that same day and sent me into the elementary arena. Everyone flattened to a fixed level 10, no weapons, pure skill, so a rich kid's resources can't buy the win. The system searched for an opponent in my bracket. It found one immediately. The name that came up on the matchboard made the whole thing a lot more interesting because it wasn't a stranger. It was the strongest martial student in my entire school. Zhu Liang. He was polite about it, which was almost worse. He'd heard of me from Teacher Zhu, gave me a respectful little nod across the arena, and then opened with a D-rank windbreaker finger aimed at my throat like a gentleman. This was my first real fight, ever. And he knew it, and he used it exactly the way Lin Huanwan had combat experience as a weapon all its own, and he had years of it, and I had a spreadsheet. For the first few minutes he ran me around. Scraped my shoulder, opened a strip of skin, and let me tell you, the pain simulation on BattleNet is extremely committed to realism. It hurt like the real thing. And here is where the willpower I'd built, and that mountain-moving method I'd suffered for, earned their keep. Instead of panicking, I ran the visualization. I pictured the mountain. I went completely defensive, textbook perfect, no wasted motion, and I let his experience wash over a boy who had simply decided not to move. And while I was in there being a rock, I noticed two things. One, his strikes had no real weight behind them. He was probing, testing, not committing, which meant even he wasn't sure he could crack me. Two, and this was the good one, Zhu Liang built his whole style on the same basic body forging method I had. Foundation against foundation. He just walked me onto the one piece of ground in the world I owned outright. The 10-minute timer wound down. At 2 seconds left, he relaxed, just a hair, just the instinct of a man who thinks he's about to run out the clock on a draw. I'd been coiled like a bowstring for 10 full minutes waiting for exactly that hair. Iron bridge. Half step forward turned his retreat into my charge, and I threw one punch with everything. Foot, waist, spine, fist, 3 years of 8.6, and every red interrupted. The scroll had ever spat at me, all of it in one line. And as it left me, I felt something ride along with it, some shape I'd never touched before, and I thought, is this it? Is this the thing he keeps talking about? Guan blocked, and it didn't matter that he blocked. His arm got knocked aside like a screen door, and the fist went into his chest. You are dead. Winner Lin Chen, he took it beautifully. Never underestimate an opponent, he said, mostly to himself. Lesson learned. I told him I got lucky. He didn't believe me, and he was right not to. But the real prize wasn't the win. Back in my body, back at the school gym, I tried to throw that punch again, the one with the shape riding on it, and I couldn't. It was gone. Just a normal punch. I chased it for an hour before I got desperate and did the one thing I hadn't tried. I visualized the mountain, held it in my mind, immovable, and threw. Slight understanding of martial Tao true intent, the mountain. Efficiency plus 100%, comprehension plus 50%. There it was. My intent wasn't fire or wind or water. Of course it wasn't. My intent was the mountain, because the mountain is just a rock that refused to move for so long that people started building temples on it, and I had been that rock for 3 years. With the mountain held in my mind, I cultivated the basic body forging method at double speed, hit 100 reps, and took an epiphany that came in twice as strong and strangely gentle, vast instead of sharp. The long bottleneck I'd been stuck against cracked like ice on a pond. Basic body forging method, minor achievement. A handful of students in the whole school ever reach minor achievement in that art. It's the ceiling most people spend years pawing at. I did it in 4 hours on a gym floor, then nearly passed out from hunger, because apparently comprehending the fundamental nature of mountains burns about 3,000 calories and I'd skipped lunch. Word got around. It always does. Zhu Liang went back to his own little circle. A cold, precise boy named Wang Hao who thought Guan leaned too hard on basics, and a girl named Zhao Hua, and told them he'd lost to the kid from nowhere, and I stopped being a rumor and started being a variable. The kind people plan around. When the Winter Intensive picked its roster, my name was on it. 24 of the best young martial students in the city, and a delivery driver's son who 3 months ago couldn't move a needle off 8.6. Chen Fei, my gloriously lazy deskmate, was prouder of me than I was. I told him the truth. It wasn't me. It was 2 vials of potion my parents bought with money they didn't have. I just left out, again, the part where I'd turned those 2 vials into a machine that ran on homework and never, ever stopped. The intensive class started with somebody trying to fight me in a hallway. His name was Wu Kaiyan, no relation to my teacher, formerly the number 2 in his class, currently very upset that a nobody had jumped the line. He planted himself in front of me and Shiyi, the other pick, and demanded satisfaction. Teacher Lai, walking by, shrugged. Settle it with fists, encouraging. So we did it in Training Hall 1 in front of all 24 elites, Guan, Deng, Zhao Hua, the whole set. And this is the part I want to be honest about because it wasn't the punch that mattered. Wu Kaiyan threw a side kick like an iron pillar and I didn't move my feet. Blocked it planted, he spun a whip kick and I slipped it without stepping. Then I put a counterpunch out and stopped it a full inch from his nose and held it there and let him look at it. What went quiet in that hall wasn't shock or knockout. There wasn't one. It was that everyone in the room could feel that I'd changed. Grasping the mountain hadn't just given me a plus 100% line on a panel. It had settled into me. I stood there with a fist an inch from a kid's face and the composure of something you'd need dynamite to relocate, and even Wang Hao, who had made cold disdain into a personality, muttered, "He's very strong." From Deng, that was practically a love letter. Then they ranked us, and the ranking is where the trouble started. Teacher Zhu set it up as a challenge ladder: beat the person above you, take their slot, take their resources. When the initial board went up, it read, first Zhu Liang, second Wang Hao, third Lin Chen. Fourth, Zhao Hua. The hall lost its mind. Third. Over Zhao Hua, a Class 1 veteran who'd been grinding at this longer than I'd been taking it seriously. She stood there staring at the board with her face going pale, a kid who'd worked hard her whole life watching a stranger drop out of the sky into a slot she'd bled for. She challenged me, of course she did. I'd have done the same. BattleNet, elementary real body simulation, her at 10.4 with a slight edge on me, and a C-rank family art called Lynxy Finger that specializes in breaking through a defender's Kai. And look, I want to tell you I went easy. I didn't. I was still learning exactly how much I'd become, and I hadn't yet learned the most important lesson about power, which is where the brakes are. 5 minutes I stood in the mountain and let her finger force break against me like surf. When she tired, I caught her wrist and put one straight punch into her Tanjong point. And I put too much into it. The strike didn't just win. It shattered bone, tore through her simulated body, pierced clean through. You are dead. In the real world, Zhao Hua came out of the pod like she'd been electrocuted. Ashen. Coughing, genuinely physically afraid because her body had just told her in full detail that it had died. The crowd murmured the words I'd earned a few more times that year. Ruthless. Flower destroyer. And here's the thing I only figured out later. I'd hurt her pride worse than her body because her real weakness had never been skill. It was that she was afraid to die, even in a simulation, and I'd walked her straight up to it. I felt bad about that. I did. But somebody else fixed it before I could figure out how to. A boy challenged the shaken Zhao Hua right after, expecting an easy meal. Teacher Zhu leaned down and said something in her ear. I never heard what. And this time Zhao Hua accepted with a face like a closed door. She went in cold and resolute, riddled the boy with finger strikes in under a minute, put her fingertip to his throat, and walked out a different person. Not an easy target anymore. I'd killed her fear by making her taste the thing she feared, and Zai had handed her the anger to build on top of it. Her father, it turned out, was a retired martial master, and her uncle was a star at Star Martial University, and when she came home rattled, he didn't scold her. He told her the truth I hadn't. You didn't lose to bad luck. You lost to a minor achievement basic body forging method. And then he told her what my real level was, and how fast it was climbing, and Zhao Hua understood that the kid from nowhere wasn't a fluke she could outwork in a week. I was starting to collect people like that. People who went home and told their families about me. I didn't know it yet, but a few of those families were the kind you really don't want doing your homework on you. For a couple of weeks I lived in the elementary arena and used strangers as furniture. A leg fighter from Yingang, a knuckle brawler, a woman with a dagger. I didn't beat them so much as study them, standing in the mountain, reading how real people with real habits tried to break a wall. Every match was a free tutor. Every loss would have been a free tutor too, except I mostly stopped losing. Then Teacher Lai pulled me into a private room on the net and offered me the actual key to the kingdom, which turned out to be money. Top-tier student resources, 100,000 Federation coins every 2 weeks. He said it plainly. The school invests in students the way you'd plant a fruit tree. You feed the ones that might one day feed you back. Spend it all on Kai and blood potion, he said. Rush level 11. 11 is where the body starts to transform and the higher grounds open up. And then he said the thing that reorganized my whole plan. For a score that gets you noticed, you need a weapon. The masters all fight with weapons. Bare fists cap out fast. I didn't want a flashy weapon. I wanted a weapon that fought the way I already thought: plant, endure, punish. The BattleNet Armory's AI listened to me describe myself, chewed on it, and spat out a C-rank legacy called the Wind Stabilizing Spear. Immovable as a mountain, swift as fire. It was practically named after me. 3 basic forms: Army Stabilizing Stance, Cloud-Piercing Stab, Returning Wind Sweep, and a student price of 1,000 coins, which after the potions I'd been buying felt like finding change in a coat. Here's the beautiful part. I ground the spear the hard way at first, by hand off the panel, because the machine only tracks legitimate arts and it hadn't recognized this one yet. My old mounting crushing fist, for instance, it never scored too crude, more habit than art. But the day I actually got the Wind Stabilizing Spear's basics down, the scroll noticed. A new line lit up. Practicing the spear now triggers the 100 cultivate epiphany too, which meant I now had 2 homework assignments a day and the universe was paying out on both. 100 spear cultivates, 1 epiphany, getting started in a blink. And a few days later, mid-cultivation, my Kai and blood shoved through another shackle and my whole skeleton crackled at once. Level 11. If 10 is a gate, 11 is a watershed. Past it, every 10th of a level is worth 3 times what it used to be. And 11 is the unofficial floor for even being allowed to dream about the 10 elite universities. When they retested the class, the board read Guan at 11.1, Deng at 10.9, me at 11.0, up from 10.2, an 8/10 jump while everyone else crawled, and Zhao Hua at 10.7, her revenge officially postponed on account of me being an entire tier away now. Teacher Zhu bumped me to 2nd on the strength of the level alone, over Deng, without a fight. Wang Hao did not care for being swapped by a decimal, so he proposed a dual standard mode, both of us forced down to a flat level 10, pure skill, no resource advantage, and he'd take 3rd either way. He didn't want the rank. He wanted to know if his stone-splitting palm could crack me when the numbers couldn't. He came out swinging from the first second, all the way to his ultimate, the stone-splitting collapse, a gray killing palm. And I'll admit I was half in my own head thinking about the spear, which is exactly when the answer arrived on its own. I dropped into a half-spear stance and threw my right fist like a cloud-piercing stab. Fist as spear. Same line, same accumulated force, same single lethal point. It punched through the gap at his wrist joint, jammed the collapse before it finished, and the follow-up put him 7 meters across the floor. Winner Lin Chen, 1 exchange. Deng lay there a second, then got up and bowed, which cost him something, and swore he'd reach 11 and pick up a weapon of his own. The teachers, watching, were less interested in the win than in the trick. I'd folded a spear technique into a bare fist days after buying the thing. He's not learning arts, he said quietly to Zai. He's learning the principle underneath them and pouring whatever he wants into it. Which was the single most accurate thing anyone said about me all year, and neither of them knew the half of it. The spear kept giving. Its legacy unlocked a feature called Cloud-Parting Force, a way to accumulate power in waves, stacking a cloud-piercing stab into a double burst, then eventually more. And right as I started grinding that, Teacher Lai dropped the thing the whole term had been building toward. March 5th, a 3-school joint exam. Hong No. 1 against United High against Yingang No. 1, with observers from the Provincial Martial Arts Association in the room, and in their pocket, a special admission recommendation to one of the 3 great institutions. The kind of door that doesn't open twice. The favorite, a United High monster named Chen Ziohong at level 13, was away at provincial training and wouldn't compete, which meant first place was actually, genuinely, insanely on the table. For me, for the kid who 3 months ago was furniture. Comprehend more true intent if you can, he said. Push to 11.5, and Tan, he stopped, and for once he didn't smile. Don't tell anyone what you can do. Not yet, some doors you want to walk through before the people on the other side know you're coming. Great advice. I fully intended to follow it. I made it about 3 weeks. To get ready, I left the kiddie pool. I entered ranked, the Shura arena, and the name is not marketing. It's grim, 5 placement matches to seed you, against grown fighters who do this for real. I won my first against a claw-knuckle youth and felt good about myself for roughly 90 seconds. Then, I met a calm, middle-aged man with a B-rank sword and the true intent of fire. He cut me in half in 3 strikes. I don't mean I lost. I mean the simulation dutifully rendered the sensation of a blade with genuine, will-forged sharpness passing through my body. And I died, fully, twice more after that, because he was patient, and I was a child who'd started to believe his own highlight reel. He never gloated. He barely looked at me. To him, I was a training weight, and that's what put the fear in properly, not cruelty, just the flat arithmetic of a world where somebody that far above you doesn't even change his breathing to end you. A world of the strong. I'd read the phrase 100 times. That afternoon, I felt it go in behind my ribs and stay there. Then I clawed out the last 3 placements, and I clawed them out angry, which turns out to be a very effective way to fight when you point it correctly. A heavy-glove brute who wanted to trade power with me. I let him think he was winning the trade, planted, and put a triple-force fist through his guard that folded him at the waist. A dagger woman, quick and cruel, who tried the same enclosed swarm the fire swordsman would have laughed at. I stopped chasing and made her come onto my spear. And last a greatsword, all reach and momentum, who I simply refused to let get his swing started, crowding him until his big weapon was a liability in his own hands. 3 wins, seeded first rank, 74 points, and I went home carrying something I've never put down since. The permanent understanding that my mountain, however immovable, was a very small mountain in a range full of much, much larger ones. There was a man out there who ended me 3 times without changing his breathing. I intended to become the reason someone, someday, felt the way I felt that afternoon. The principal himself briefed me after that, Zhao Chen, a retired innate martial master with the temper of a man who used to be shot at for a living. He laid out the field like a war map. Yingang's Wen, level 12.5, a walking battering ram who ate medicine like candy and had divine strength and the technique of a charging ox. United's Zhu Qiang, an iron wall tank you could bounce a truck off. And United's Guo Yan, level 11 and change, a shadow sword prodigy, disciple of somebody important, the kind of talent that makes teachers lower their voices. First place in the joint exam was worth 200,000 coins from the school alone, and that recommendation. Right after the briefing, Zhu Liang challenged me to a real-life match, both of us at 11.4, no simulation. He'd gotten better. He probed with footwork, then went all out with his own crushing rock. I tilted out of the way like a willow, tapped his wrist point with a beak-fingered strike to kill the nerve, caught the arm and put a straight fist to a full stop at his throat. Blink and you'd have missed it. The gap's too big, he said, and he wasn't sad about it, just accurate. What he didn't know was that the gap wasn't talent. It was that I'd been dying to a fire swordsman in the Shura arena all week and he'd been sparring classmates. Experience against experience. I just had a crueler tutor. That made me ranked first in the class. It also made me curious about Wen, so I went hunting for him in the Shura arena, and the universe, with its excellent sense of humor, matched us. Wen at level 12.6 with a ghost head broadsword and a body like a loading dock. And he crushed me. First time in a while somebody just physically overwhelmed me. I spat blood, couldn't even trade, got walked down by raw mass. And in the middle of getting demolished, I had my epiphany the hard way. I'd built my whole self on immovable as the mountain and completely skipped the other half of my own spear's creed. Swift as fire. The mountain doesn't win by sitting there. Sometimes the mountain has to become the avalanche. So I stopped defending and I charged a dying man's charge. All in cloud-piercing stab, and I stacked the cloud-parting force into a triple burst, 3 waves, something I'd never pulled off, and drove it straight through Wen's heart. His broadsword took my left arm off at the same instant. Winner Lin Chen. I stood there in the simulation with 1 arm and a dead giant at my feet, and I did not feel like a winner. I felt like a boy who'd traded an arm for a kill because he got too close and had no way out, and I knew a real proctor with a scoring pen would have failed us both for that. Mutual destruction isn't skill. It's desperation with good aim. But back at the gym, when I chased that 444 stab and finally recaptured it, the spear crossed into minor achievement and unlocked the exact thing I'd been missing my whole short career. a feature called silk-reeling force. A subtle, coiling energy you feed through every parry and contact, offense and defense braided into one thread, so that touching a stronger opponent doesn't just block him, it plants something in him. It was the answer to the one weakness that had almost gotten me killed twice. I couldn't beat people above my weight before. Now I could get my hands on them and start unwinding them from the inside. Wen, meanwhile, went home and threw a tantrum at his uncle, which is a sentence I'd end up thinking a lot of times that year. His family, it turned out, had a martial master in it, and that master took one look at the replay of a force column punching through his nephew's chest and started very calmly doing his homework on me. His diagnosis was annoyingly correct. Never let the turtle plant, he told Wen. Never trade with him at range where he can stack that force. Attack his weapon directly, jam it, and drag him into a straight physical brawl where he has to come out of his shell and expose himself. Then he drilled Wen in a 3-variation move called the layered wave slash, built specifically to crack a defender who won't move. He'd found the seam in me from a single replay. That's what a real master is. I found the same seam a week later from the other side, and it cost me 2 beatings to do it. First, the good news. I finally fully comprehended the mountain. I'd been forcing it into the spear and getting nowhere, so I stopped forcing and just did my ordinary body forging cultivation, calm, patient. And on the 7th rep it arrived on its own like it had been waiting for me to quit grabbing at it. The panel lit up gold, comprehended the true intent of the mountain in full. Permanent plus 50 to body forging, Kai blood coagulation up 20, and a feature, suppress the mountain. A phantom peak I could drop over an opponent's spirit. My body forging leapt deep into minor achievement, and somewhere in there I finally understood my own build. My strength was never defense. Defense was the wind-up. My strength was the one explosive instant after the avalanche off the immovable slope. The mountain exists to make the fall further. Now the beatings. Teacher Lai ran guidance battles. The teachers suppressed to our level, simulating the exam. First up me against he, and he did not fight me the way students fight. He roamed, controlled, wove an invisible net around me, read every move a half-second early, and never once let me plant my feet or gather the cloud-parting force. 3 minutes and he had me throat-pinned. I lasted longer than anyone. The rest of the class died in under a minute, Guan in about 30 seconds, but I still lost cleanly to a man who never threw a real power strike. "Your defense is too passive," he said, and I felt the ground drop out because it was word for word the plan Wen's uncle had cooked up in his villa. 2 masters, 2 cities, no contact, same knife aimed at the same crack in me. The answer wasn't some genius new counter. The answer was the silk-reeling force. Stop being a wall waiting to be broken and become a thorn in every exchange, disrupting the rhythm so nobody gets to write the music but me. So I ground it, days of it, and then teacher Zhu put me through guidance battle number 2, and Zhu Lei is a true martial master, and it turns out, a spear user. She fought me by being me. My defensive counter-style, my patience, my traps, done better, done with her own silk-reeling, a perfect senior version of myself staring back across the ring. It was humbling in a very specific, very useful way. But I caught one gap. One, and I put everything I had into a single spear thrust with the mountain detonating behind it, and Zhu Lei, a martial master, holding herself at my level, could not slip it. She had to break the suppression cap and use her real, over-level power just to knock my spear offline. I lost the match. But I'd forced a martial master to cheat the ceiling to survive one thrust, and both of us knew what that meant. She looked at me for a long second afterward and said nothing, and we agreed without agreeing to keep that little fact in our back pocket, unlisted for the exam. The principal was less restrained. When he heard I'd grasped true intent, actual full true intent, at my age at that level, he lit up like a holiday, because in the joint exam that's worth an enormous chunk of score, enough to put a 3 great institutions recommendation genuinely within reach. He ordered it kept a total secret, a surprise weapon. Then he got on a high-security channel to an old friend and rival, the principal of United High, a man named Zhang Jianping, and the 2 of them made a bet on whose school would score higher. The stakes were a 30-year bottle of crimson blood brew against a manual called the Starfall Fist. Han was confident. He didn't even have Chen Ziyouheng, and he was confident. 2 old men wagering rare liquor and secret techniques over a fight none of the kids knew was rigged with expectations. I'd love to tell you I found that inspiring. Mostly I found it stressful. But the exam was in 3 days, and I had a mountain in my head, a spear in my hands, and a whole city of people who had no idea what the delivery driver's kid had turned into over one winter. Time to fix that. The Red River City Martial Arts Center on exam morning was a zoo of teenagers pretending not to size each other up. United Zhu Qiang stood there like a municipal water tower with a haircut. Yingang's Wen spotted me across the floor, swaggered over to run his mouth, and got hauled backward by his own ear. The hand on the ear belonged to a tall, cool young woman who turned out to be his big sister, Wen Jing, a genuine Yingang genius already studying at one of the three great institutions. She apologized for him with the weary efficiency of someone who'd been apologizing for him her whole life, and dragged him off. I liked her immediately. Then they ran the level check, and I got my first taste of a joke that would keep paying dividends for the rest of the year, the sound of a room recalculating me in real time, when topped it at 12.7, obviously. Zhu Qiang 11.8, a United kid at 11.7, and then fourth at 11.6, Lin Chen. The boy who'd been under 9.0 before winter. I watched people find my name on the board, then find my old record, then look up at my face like the two things refused to belong to the same person. Guo Yan and Zhu Liang were right behind me at 11.5. The morning was rating battles. You fight a proctor and get graded D through S. Most of the room pulled C's and D's. The first A's went to the monsters. When Wen got an almost entirely off his level and his iron fists, technique like a demolition crew. Zhu Qiang got into being an aggressive wall. And Guo Yan got into that made the observers sit forward, because Guo Yan fights wrong. She uses a fist as if it were a sword, and out of impossible angles she conjures sword lights that look real, that behave real, near metaphysical, like the idea of a blade is more dangerous than any actual one. I filed that away under problem for later. My turn came in the afternoon against a United senior, a master named Guan. I opened loud an explosive cloud-piercing fist to announce myself, then went to the wall, silk reeling in every contact, patient planting seeds. When the rhythm was mine, I timed one disruption and drove a triple-force cloud-piercing stab clean into him. Rating, A. Honk's first of the day. Across the hall, I watched United's coach lean over to Guo Yan and start talking fast, and I didn't need to hear it to know the subject was me. Up in the VIP room, though, the conversation that actually decided my life was happening without me. The Provincial Association's observation team was up there. A blunt older man everyone called Boss Liu, an eager young one named Lai Ming, a senior woman who mostly watched. And Lai Ming had already picked his favorite, and it was me. He kept jabbing a finger at the replay, running the numbers out loud. Under 9 before winter, now a minor achievement spear and the silk-reeling force and genuine true intent, all of it in a single season on nothing from a nobody school. If that's not what the recommendation exists for, he wanted to know, then what is it for? There was exactly one spot. And Boss Liu said the wise, cautious, noncommittal thing that men in charge of exactly one spot always say. Let's watch and see. It sounded like patience. I'd learn later that let's watch and see, in a room where the powerful are deciding what to do with something that belongs to you, is just the polite sound a door makes right before it's opened for somebody else. The student duels ran 2 days, 5 A-rankers carving each other up. My first was Zhu Qiang, wall against wall, and it should have been the most boring fight of the tournament. It wasn't, because Chen couldn't feel what I was doing to him. He bragged, he tanked my punches, he called me a turtle, and every single time our limbs touched, I threaded the silk reeling straight past his iron wall's surface and coiled it around the organs and meridians underneath. About 3 minutes in, his Kai stuttered. His guard hitched, and I stopped being a wall and became the avalanche, deflect, triple force cloud piercing to the Tanjong, and the water tower went over. Score, 85.5 to 81. United's coach looked like he'd bitten a lemon because the iron wall has exactly one flaw and I'd found it. It has no offense of its own, so if you can survive it and rot it from inside, it just stands there and loses. Meanwhile, Wen was making the whole thing look easy in the ugliest possible way. Wang Hao threw his ultimate, the stone-splitting collapse, the gray killing palm that had once tried to crack me, and it landed on Wen's iron arms and barely left a mark. Then Wen threw one punch back, broke both of Deng's arms and rattled the organs behind them, and Zhu Lei had to jump onto the stage to keep him in one piece. 84 to 80. There's no technique to Wen. There's a level advantage and a body like a collapsing building, and at this stage that's enough to end careers. Then, Wen ran into Guo Yan, and I got to watch the battering ram meet the thing that battering rams can't touch. He came at her the way he came at everyone, all mass and forward momentum, and she simply wasn't where the momentum went. Her shadow sword riddled him with cuts out of impossible angles, wounds that wouldn't close because the sharpness was a wound to the spirit as much as the body, and no amount of iron arm defends a mind. His sister Wen Jing conceded the match from the stands to keep her brother whole, and I made a note, watching, that the girl who fought like smoke was the one I actually had to solve. 88.5 to 87. So going into the last set, the board was clear. Guo Yan and Wen went on top, me a hair back at third, and everyone in that building doing the same arithmetic I was. The recommendation was going to come down to the two fighters who hadn't lost, her and me. Which is how I ended up standing across a ring from a girl who could make swords out of her own mind, with one seat to the rest of my life balanced on whichever of us was still standing at the end. I attacked first, deliberately. I'd watched her wear Wen down like water on a stone, and I was not about to hand her the slow fight she wanted. I pressured her into a corner, forced a trade, and got one clean touch, planted a silk-reeling seed into her wrist, same as I'd done to Zhu Qiang. Then she showed me why she scared the adults. She blurred, not fast like Wen, fast like smoke, and my one real weakness, no dedicated movement art and a body that couldn't afford to eat hits, hung out in the open for her to see. She flickered behind me in a sword shadow, a real, condensed, actual blade formed out of nothing, came down across my left shoulder to the bone, and it wouldn't heal. The sharpness itself resisted the Sim's mercy, like the idea of the cut was more stubborn than the cut. That's when I understood what I was fighting. Her shadow sword was a mind image, a blade forged out of pure spirit, her will made sharp, and her mental strength was a monster's prodigy numbers, the kind of talent you're born with and I would never have. The observers upstairs I heard afterward had already written me off. At a high schooler's level, they said, you cannot answer that. He's in danger. Here's what saved me. A mountain I'd ground to gravel behind my eyes for 3 days back in the beginning. The mountain moving method cushioned the mental blow, kept the will cut from splitting my mind the way it split my shoulder. And a wall that can survive the sword long enough to think is a wall that can set a trap. So I set one. I showed her a gap on purpose. A gap right over my ribs, delicious, undeniable, exactly the killing opening a predator can't refuse. She committed a sword shadow to it with everything she had, and I turned into it. Not a way into it, a twist I'd rehearsed 100 times against a possibility exactly like this, my fist rising to meet her blade, and at the point of contact, I stopped holding the mountain back and let all of it out at once. The full true intent. A mountain rose behind me, vast, phantom, real enough that people in the stands felt their knees go soft, and her sword shadow, that beautiful, lethal idea of a blade, shattered against the immovable slope like a wave against a cliff. My fist kept going. It cracked her arm and threw her across the ring, blood on her lips, and I was already moving to follow up when her senior brother, proctoring, stepped in and ended it. Winner, Lin Chen, 90.5, an S-level score. Let me put that in context. An S-level score, 4 months before the real college entrance exam, is the number that opens the 3 great institutions. From under 9.0 to that in one winter. Hong number 1 went absolutely feral in the stands. Somewhere in a private box, Principal Liu collected a 30-year bottle of crimson blood brew off a stunned Zhang Jianping, and I'm told did not gloat gracefully. I'd won. I'd earned the spot with a number nobody could argue with. And that night, in a mountain villa I would never see, somebody argued with it anyway. They took Guo Yan to recover, and her master turned out to be the reason the adults whispered, Grandmaster Chen Qiang, the White Shadow Sword Saint, one of the pillars holding down an astral rift that threatened 6 cities. He comforted her loss kindly. True intent beat you because your mind image isn't fully formed yet, he told her. Your road runs through the spirit. You'll open your innate gate easily. Don't grieve a fight you were built to eventually win. And then he handed her an envelope. The special admission recommendation to the 3 great institutions. And even he paused and said the quiet part. Shouldn't this have been the Tan boys? It should have. By result, it was mine. But a counselor named Zai had made it disappear overnight and routed it to Guo Yan because Su was Grandmaster Ren's disciple, and Grandmaster Ren guarded 6 cities, and the Zai family would very much like a Grandmaster to owe them a favor. My spot was currency. They spent it. Up in the observation room, Lai Ming found out and nearly took the roof off. I won, he kept saying, the kid won, he showed true intent. The counselor agreed it was his, and then the family flipped it in the dark. Boss Liu let him rage, then told him the adult truth. He'd already sent my data up to provincial headquarters, and if it was good enough, the institutions would still be open to me after the real entrance exam. As for the stolen spot, the Zai family sent along a consolation prize. 500,000 coins, donated to me through the school, the way you'd tip a valet whose car you just scratched. I found all this out from Principal Liu back at school. I was a celebrity by then. Kids I'd never spoken to calling me Senior Tan in the halls. The whole campus lit up over the boy who'd shown true intent at a joint exam, the boy who'd earned an S. I walked into that glow straight to the principal's office and got the other half of the story. He told me evenly, the way you tell someone bad news you've already made peace with for them. The recommendation spot, the one I'd won in front of everyone, the one that was mine by every rule and every result, had gone to Guo Yan. Zai family, Grandmaster Ren, politics. A counselor named Zai had made it disappear overnight and handed it to the girl I'd beaten because her master guarded 6 cities and the Zai family wanted a grandmaster to owe them, and a delivery driver's son was the cheapest chip on the table to pay that debt with. Then Liu slid a card across the desk. 500,000 coins. The Zai family's compensation. The way you tip a valet whose car you just backed into. I kept my face perfectly still. I'm good at that. Delivery driver's kid, remember, I learned before I could shave that complaining doesn't move a single needle in the world, and that the people who can afford to be outraged are the people who were never going to lose anything anyway. Then Principal Liu stopped being even. He slammed his palm flat on the desk so hard the card jumped, and the retired soldier came all the way up out of the retired administrator. Thanks, he said. Thanks my ass, you listened to me, you remember who did this. You remember who took what was yours and handed it off like it was theirs to give. He was breathing hard. And you understand why they could, because you're not strong enough yet. That's the only reason anyone gets to bully you in this world. You haven't made it too expensive. He pulled out another card and dropped it on top of the Zai families. The schools own 500,000. Get me top 10 in the province at the real exam. Top 10, and I take this all the way to the capital myself. He leaned in. This is not over, do you hear me? This is not over. I heard him. I picked up both cards, and I did the math that the Zai family, in all their cleverness, had forgotten to do. They'd handed a boy who turned resources into levels a full 1,000,000 coins and told him to go away quietly. They thought they were closing a door. They'd just paid for the battering ram. Because here's what 1,000,000 coins buys a boy like me, not comfort. A better engine. Teacher Lai explained the ceiling I was about to hit. At my stage, most body-forging arts cap at minor achievement no matter how hard you grind. The art itself runs out of road. The only way past it is a higher-grade art, B rank or above, which reforges your foundation and, crucially, condenses your Kai and blood so densely it drags your life level up on its own. Money can't win the entrance exam for you, he said, but this is the one thing money can genuinely buy. So I went shopping in the BattleNet body forging catalog, past the prices that made my eyes water, and I picked the 100 Refinements furnace. B rank, 1,000,000 coins, authored by a grandmaster named Lai Tao. The idea of it was the whole reason I chose it. Treat the body as a furnace, feed everything into the fire, refine all of it, no shortcuts, no specialization, just relentless comprehensive tempering. It was, in other words, my entire personality rendered as a martial art. I bought it with the Zai family's money and the school's money in the same transaction, which felt correct. Your bribe and your spite fused into one dark gold jade slip. Thank you both. The furnace was miserable and I loved it. 29 contorted stances, and the very first move, furnace first burn, took me 3 full days because the panel had raised its standards on me. It wasn't just grading my posture anymore, it was grading the Kai and blood circulating inside me, the actual internal fire. When the furnace finally caught, when I felt real heat bloom in my lower abdomen like a coal deciding to live, the scroll added a new line, and then did the thing that made me laugh out loud alone in a cultivation room. My basic body forging method, long stuck, ticked upward on its own. The furnace fed it. Everything I'd already built was fuel for the new fire. Nothing I'd done was wasted. It never is with this build. That's the secret the whole world keeps missing. 10 more days on that one move and I hit 100 cultivates and took a furnace epiphany. And if the regular ones were a warm flood, this was the ocean. 4% in a single epiphany, because the harder the art, the bigger the payout. Advanced homework is worth more than easy homework. Who knew? Every grinding hour I'd ever spent on the basics came pouring in through that one door. There was, of course, a catch, and the catch had a monthly bill. The furnace was hungry. It digested a Kai and blood potion in 3 days, then 2, and my beautiful millions started evaporating like water on a hot stone. My cultivation, it turned out, had a subscription fee, and the furnace had upgraded me to the premium tier without asking. School gave 100,000 every 2 weeks. The furnace ate 300,000 a month. My savings had a countdown timer on them now, and I could see the zero coming. He walked me through the options and shot most of them down. Underground fighting, illegal, ruins your future. Selling yourself to a private family or corporation, nobody signs a high schooler. Even the great Luo Jianfeng flunked a corporate interview. Odd Federation jobs, slow, cheap time I didn't have. What was left was a loan. Star Martial Battle Net runs a student assistance program. Low interest, first year free, monitored so you can only spend it on cultivation. Built by the university's old president specifically so poor kids could stop losing to rich families before the race even started. He had used one himself in college. I needed Battle Net rank 3 to qualify, so I clawed my way up the Shura ladder to get it, eating a loss here and there to swordsmen a full level above me, and got there. But I was a minor, which meant I needed a guardian's signature, which meant, again, my parents. We had the conversation over dinner, and my mother went quiet in the way that means she's frightened, because in our house debt was the monster under the bed. 700,000 coins is a number that doesn't fit in a delivery driver's kitchen. But my dad put down his chopsticks and said the thing that I will be trying to deserve for the rest of my life. If you can't pay it back, he said, we will. Like it was simple. Like 100th of it wouldn't have buried them. Nothing but hard work, so we work harder, and if the work isn't enough, we cover the difference with everything we have and don't mention the fear out loud. I signed, and I put that fear to work. The furnace and the loan took me from 11.5 to level 13 in about 6 weeks. My body started changing early, skin like leather, strength that surprised me, cuts scabbing over in half an hour, the kind of transformation that's supposed to arrive around level 20. And when I felt solid, I went back to the Shura arena to test it, and the universe, my faithful comedian, matched me with Wen again. He swaggered up, saw my readout, and the swagger fell right off his face. You're level 13? He looked genuinely offended by it. 6 weeks ago you were 11.6. Are you even human? I get asked that a lot. I've started thinking of it as a compliment with bad manners. This time I didn't dodge his ghost head saber. I met it head on, spear like a steel ingot, roots in the floor. My strength and speed matched his now, and my skill never had. I riddled him with holes in 2 minutes while barely getting scratched. And when he threw his ultimate, the layered waves, mountain-shattering slash his uncle drilled into him, I answered with the furnace flame stacked onto a triple-force cloud-piercing stab. It detonated straight through the saber and put the spear at his throat. You are dead. Again. Sorry, when? His uncle reviewed that replay too and correctly deduced I'd cultivated a high-order body-forging art, which is easy to learn and brutal to master, and only possible at all because I'd completely finished the basic one first. He kept being right about me. It just kept not mattering, because knowing exactly how a flood works doesn't help when you're standing in the valley. And then my loan application did something I didn't expect. It got too interesting to stay small. The system flagged my potential at a plus and kicked the file upstairs, all the way to the head of Star Martial Group's provincial branch, a man named Wang Yang, an innate martial master, and of all the coincidences in all the world, the personal disciple of Grandmaster Lai Tao. The man who wrote my furnace. Chen took one look at a high schooler who'd half-mastered the furnace flame in 39 days, with Kai blood comprehension like a grown martial master, and he approved the full million on the spot. Then he added me to a provincial watch list, made a note to recruit me after the exam, and told his people not to touch the seedling yet, let it grow wild a while longer. He also, I'm told, laughed at the Zai family because Grandmaster Ren was far too proud to ever actually thank them for the stolen spot, which meant the Zai family had spent my future and bought themselves nothing. He decided he'd have his own people repay me directly and enjoy the Zai family getting nothing for their cleverness. I didn't know any of that at the time. All I knew was that the next morning, 1,000,000 coins landed in my account, and Principal Liu pulled me aside with a new and frankly insane instruction. Stop showing up. Publicly, I was still an 11, 6 kid with a good exam. He wanted it kept that way, no more class tests, only out-of-province matches on the net, total intelligence blackout, my real-level estate secret. Because at the pace I was climbing, he said, I wouldn't be fighting for top 10 in the province anymore. He put a list in front of me, the top 20 life levels in the province. Number 1 at 14.8, Luo Jianfeng. Linjiang number 1, the teenager from my father's television. Forget top 10, Liu said. New target, him. I want you to take first in the province, and I want you to take it off of that boy specifically. He almost smiled. You're the real genius, Lin Chen. Master that furnace in 4 months, and you'll rock it to level 20. I didn't correct him, but I knew the truth, and the truth was funnier than genius. I wasn't going to beat Luo Jianfeng with talent. I was going to beat him the way I beat everything. 100 correct reps a day, and a scroll that refused to let me lie to myself, and a family that would cover the debt if the homework wasn't enough. The provincial number 1, my dad's real genius. I put his file on my desk, right next to the 2 empty potion vials I'd never thrown away, and I got to work. The file on Luo Jianfeng was a nightmare if you read it the normal way. They called him the Little 8 Wonders, proficient in all 8 weapon categories: fist, palm, leg, footwork, knife, sword, spear, shield, 30-odd arts, all at minor achievement or better, a photographic learner with no visible hole in his technique. Read it the normal way and he's untouchable. He and I read it the other way. Spread that thin, a man has no killer trump card. Nothing above C rank because his life level caps every art he owns. He's invincible against anyone at his level and completely helpless against anyone above it. He's a bucket made of 100 short planks, he said. Every one of them the same modest height. We don't need 100 planks. We need 1 plank so long it doesn't matter what the rest of the bucket looks like. We smash the whole thing with the 1 board he can't match. Which meant I had to be higher level than him, and I had to force him into a straight fight where my 1 enormous plank, condensed Kai blood, and a single lethal line beat his 100 pretty little ones. The problem was the forcing. My biggest weakness was still footwork. I had no real movement art, which is exactly how Guo Yan had nearly guerrillaed me to death. A slippery, all-terrain fighter like Fang could dance around me all day. So I bought a movement art, instant shadow step, C+, 15,000 coins, which routes Kai and blood into the foot points for an explosive instant burst. It demands dense Kai blood and a tough body to survive the strain, both of which the furnace had already handed me. It fit like it had been waiting. And grinding it taught me the last thing I needed to understand about myself and about Luo Jianfeng. The step came easy, absurdly easy next to the furnace, and I realized this is how he does it. This is how anyone learns 100 arts. Once you truly own the fundamentals, every new technique arrives by analogy. You're not learning it, you're recognizing it. Luo Jianfeng wasn't a freak. He was just a rich kid who'd finished his basics and then bought 100 branches to hang on the same trunk. I'd done the same thing. The difference was I'd kept watering 1 trunk until it grew a plank that could break a bucket. 100 reps a day, an epiphany, and instant shadow step opened its speed feature, silent afterimage dashes, real burst mobility. By the end of May, I tested at 14.2, up 1.2 in a single month and accelerating. I was, at this point, a man-made when with skill, and now speed bolted on, and I'd built the whole machine out of homework and other people's money. Around then, the actual Chen Ziohong came back from provincial training, and she came back humbled. 14.2 herself, same as me, and full of stories about a world beyond our understanding up in the capital. She'd never once beaten Luo Jianfeng even at equal level. She reported, Little 8 Wonders predicts your every move, ties you in an inescapable net, and would almost certainly be this year's provincial top scorer. The only fighter close to him was a saber monster named Zhu Quan, a hair below Fang, with a B-rank killing art and true intent and a terrifying opening burst, except the exam ban's weapons, which cut Shen off at the knees and left Fang unchallenged. Chen Ziohong wanted to test the mystery dark horse, me. So we did a match on the net, capped at level 13 to protect my secret, and I used nothing but the basic body forging method because my condensed Kai blood is 30% stronger than hers even at equal level, and I crushed her in 2 minutes. She threw her killing move, breaking the Kai, and I tanked it barehanded and counter-killed with a furnace flame. She demanded a rematch. Then another. She lost 10 straight, her best result being the one where she broke her own arm to cost me one of mine. And here's where Chen Ziohong turned out to be smarter than her pride. Instead of spiraling, she looked at the monster who'd just beaten her 10 times and thought, I should point this thing at Linjiang. So she made a deal. She'd hand me everything she'd learned about the provincial capital, all her intel on Luo Jianfeng and Zhu Quan, if I'd stop bruising her ego and start being an asset. We became sparring partners, allies even. I told her to go regrind the basic body forging method, the universal foundation, if she ever wanted a B-rank art of her own someday, and she took it, because getting beaten 10 times makes you an excellent listener. The deepest thing she gave me was the read on Zhu Quan. Pure killer, no defense, a saber that lives entirely on offense and stacks an accumulating kill aura. Contain his opening and he collapses, he has nothing to fall back on. I was his natural nemesis, she said. I was 14.5 plus and could weather that first burst and the mental pressure that rides it. File that away too. Last piece of the furnace fell into place at the top of the mountain. The final beginner move, furnace boiling blood, is a whole body overload. Every stat surges for 2 or 3 seconds, dozens of meridians lit at once, and it kills you if you get it wrong. I couldn't do it alone, so I spent the Grandmaster experience the furnace had granted me, a saved simulation of Lai Tao's own perfect furnace body, and I rode along inside it in observer mode, watching a Grandmaster operate his Kai blood as one seamless whole. And I caught the key, guide the entire furnace with a single unified will, not 100 separate commands, but one. It felt like a shadow of the mountain true intent, except broader, quieter, not a fighting thing at all. I filed that feeling away hardest of everything. It didn't have a name yet, it would. I passed the federal academic exam in early June without breaking a sweat. Martial students only need to not fail, and cleared the last obstacle standing between me and the real thing. Level 14.5 was in reach. Level 15, if the furnace kept its promises. And the boy from my father's television had no idea that the delivery driver's kid, the one whose spot his patrons had quietly given away, was walking into Linjiang with one plank long enough to break his whole beautiful bucket. June 25th. My mom saw me off at the door with a bag of washed fruit and a face doing its very best to be brave, and I hugged her and told her not to wait up. And I didn't tell her that in a few hours a room full of innate masters was going to accuse their own equipment of being broken because of her son. Some things you save for after. Teacher Lai met me at the exam center and he had one instruction, and it reversed everything he'd drilled into me for 6 months. All year it had been hide, stay a secret, walk through the door before they know you're coming. Now he gripped my shoulder and said, "Today, don't hide." The rating scores are sealed, he explained. Only the letter grade ever goes public, and there's a 3-day gap before the duels start, so nothing I showed today could be prepped against tomorrow. Go all out. Show them the whole thing. A higher rating means a better seed, and a better seed means you get to the people who matter with something left in the tank. So for the first time since the winter, I walked toward a room with no intention of pretending to be smaller than I was. So I walked into the rating room in front of 3 provincial proctors, one of them an innate master named Minjuan, and I let them read my level. You have to understand these are serious people. They test hundreds of kids, nothing surprises them. And when the pod posted my number, one of them said the instrument's faulty before he even finished reading it, and they hauled out a backup unit and ran it again, and I stood there thinking, I've heard this song before. I heard it from teacher Lai over a cup of tea in the winter, and it never gets old. Life energy level, 15.5. Higher than their own estimate of Luo Jianfeng, the reigning number 1. On a boy from a below-average school in a nothing city with a public record frozen at 11. 6 since the winter. The 3 of them stood around that backup unit and read the same number twice, and you could see them deciding, in real time, whether to believe their own equipment or their own assumptions. The equipment won because the equipment doesn't have assumptions. Minjuan, the innate master among them, who happened to know the ugly little story of the stolen recommendation and the Zai family's fingerprints on it, was the first to accept it. Partly because I was standing right there being completely frank about it, with 2 of my own teachers as witnesses, and partly because some things simply cannot be faked in front of an innate master's eyes, and a foundation is the least fakeable thing there is. You can borrow a technique. You can buy a level. You cannot counterfeit the specific density of a boy who did the work. Then I fought my raiding battle against a proctor holding himself at martial master, and I did not hide a thing. Opened in the true intent stance so he'd feel exactly what was coming, layered in instant shadow step, tanked a palm on purpose just to counter through it, and never once let him suppress me. Final grade, S. He Minju and looked at me for a while, then he said, "Prepare to go to Linjiang, we'll be seeing each other again." Which from that man was basically a parade. The list went up June 28th. And back in Class 7, my gloriously lazy deskmate Chen Fei, who had, against all odds and largely out of second-hand inspiration, dragged himself to level 9.0 and squeaked onto the list at all, refreshed the page looking for his own name near the bottom, and found instead at the very top of the S tier above every genius in the province, the name Lin Chen. The classroom I'd spent 3 years being invisible in went completely silent and then completely insane. The whole province did the same thing over the next day. Who is Lin Chen? The question flooded the net faster than anyone could answer it. The biggest dark horse in living memory out of a non-key school nobody outside Red River had heard of, out of a public record that just stopped at 11.6 in the winter like a trail going cold out of nowhere and now first. In the whole province, above Luo Jianfeng. Above every funded prodigy with a famous name. The education department confirmed it in the hushed voice people use for things they can't quite explain, innate master he personally supervised. No error, the number is real. The rivals took it in the mouth like a cold drink. Chen Zioheng, who'd lost to me 10 straight times in secret, felt something close to relief. Losing to a boy who turned out to be a genuine monster is a lot easier on the ego than losing to a nobody. She told her camp friends, plainly, that she couldn't last 3 minutes against me at equal level, and told them to take that seriously. And somewhere in the provincial capital, Luo Jianfeng read that the #1 seat had changed owners and didn't flinch at all. Settle it in the arena, he told his crew. Exactly the kind of thing you say when you're not afraid, and exactly the kind of thing that should have worried him more than it did. And in a counselor's office, a man named Zai got the news that the provincial #1 had changed hands, from Luo Jianfeng to a name he knew very, very well, a name attached to a spot he'd quietly given away to buy a grandmaster's goodwill. He was informed. He looked at the name of the boy he decided was cheap enough to spend, now sitting at the top of the entire province, and he said simply, "I'm aware of this." I like to imagine he said it slowly. That was the payback, if you want to call it that. I never asked the Zai family for anything back. I never filed a complaint or begged for the charity seat they'd handed off. I just went and took the #1 chair in the entire province, the seat above the boy their favor was supposed to protect, and let the size of it answer them for me. You gave away my spot. Fine. I'll take a bigger one you can't give to anyone. My parents cried again. I was starting to keep a tally. Then I flew to the provincial capital with the Hong group, and half the city came to the airport to look at the dark horse. Chen Fei and my classmates saw me off. Chen Zioheng greeted me loudly enough to out our whole secret friendship. Wen, now weirdly respectful, mumbled that he didn't want to get wrecked by me a 3rd time. His sister, Wen Jing, gave me a cool nod. Even Guo Yan was there, awkward about the spot, unsure what to say. And scouts from a few quiet factions watched me bored, and one of them peeled off toward the Fang family to make a report. Because in a villa in Linjiang, Luo Jianfeng's father had brought him a very thin file on me. Hong had locked my record down so hard there was almost nothing after the joint exam. And Luo Jianfeng, who by every account was a disciplined, genuine believer in the martial path, a young man who found provincial #1 boring and wanted worthy opponents and aimed at something far past all of us, read the file, set it down, and was completely unbothered. Winning the raiding battle speaks for itself, he said. He'll be formidable, we settle it in the arena. Calm, gracious, exactly the kind of opponent you hate to like. Day 1 of the duels, they put me in an isolated alloy room with my 3 proctors and an opponent named Zhao Jian, Linjiang's own #1, level 14-3, top 15 in the whole province, a genuine local hero. The pod flashed my level for him to see the way it does. 15.5. And I watched Zhao Jian's morale get up, walk out of the room, and quietly close the door behind it. He had to fight anyway. That's the cruel part of the format. The numbers tell you you've already lost and then make you go through it. I could have crushed him with the furnace and the flame. I chose not to. There were proctors in the room grading me, and rivals who'd study the footage, and I had no reason to show anyone my whole hand on day one. So I used nothing but the basic body forging method and the instant shadow step, the beginner's art and a movement art, the two least impressive things I own. And I stood in pure defense for 5 patient minutes, while Zhao Jian spent everything he had against a wall that a Linjiang #1 simply could not move. When his ultimate came, the 1,000-layered waves, the technique that had probably won him this exact room a dozen times, I answered it with a single triple-force bow stance thrust and shattered the whole thing and ended the match in under a second. The proctors leaned forward, because they could see I hadn't gone anywhere near all out, and that is a more frightening thing to watch than a massacre. The proctors marveled that I hadn't even gone all out. I agreed to keep competing, and I agreed to let them publish my match recordings. An S-rank fighter's recordings earn a cut, and after that furnace bill, I wasn't turning down income. Zhao Jian, decent guy, immediately warned the entire Linjiang group chat about me. He was right, too. But it wasn't Zhao Jian I'd flown across a province for. It was a scar-faced saber prodigy who didn't believe a word of the warnings, and a calm boy at the top of the list who'd been waiting his whole life for someone worth fighting. They were next. The next morning, day 2, the pod gave me Zhu Quan, Linjiang's other monster, the scar-faced saber prodigy, level 15-1 against my 15-5, the closest top-tier matchup of the whole exam, and the one everyone had been waiting for. Zhu Quan came in cocky. Chen Zioheng had warned him 10 straight times over that he couldn't take me, and he had decided on pure principle not to believe a word of it. "She's wrong," he told me across the room. "A fight decides who wins, not a prediction." I told him she wasn't wrong, and that a fight was exactly how we'd find out. So I opened the way I had never once opened in my life first. I attacked first. Instant shadow step into a triple-force furnace flame bow stance punch, straight down his throat before he'd finished settling his stance. Our fists met head-on, a full collision, and he staggered 3 steps back and I barely swayed, and I watched the confidence drain right out of his scarred face as his body did the math his pride wouldn't. He was trading blows with something that hit like it was a full level above him. A saber man who lives on his opening burst does not enjoy discovering that his opponent is heavier than he is. So he stopped playing and threw his trump, the 7-kill true intent, that wave of mental pressure and real level-breaking power that had folded better fighters than me flat. My mountain ate it whole. The mental shock hit the immovable slope and slid off, and I answered with a trace of furnace boiling blood, just a taste of the overload, stacked with furnace flame and a triple-force fist, and I shattered his crimson killing blow head-on. He flew, spat blood, and it was over. I helped him up. He looked at me like I'd rearranged his understanding of the universe. "You're a monster," he said, not unhappily. "I'm going to star Marshall." We'd be neighbors. I didn't know that yet. What I did know was that Principal Liu, who'd flown in personally to watch, told me that even if I lost the next match, I was now guaranteed top 5 in the entire province. And I'd beaten Zhu Quan without ever fully opening the furnace. He'd forced out a trace. The last man could force out the rest. That man met me at the arena door the next morning, and he waited for me, which told me everything. Liu Jianfeng, the boy from my father's television in the flesh. Provincial #1 until 3 days ago, and instead of trash talk, he told me the truth. He had Zhu Quan's complete intel on me, my furnace, my kai, my footwork, all of it. "So we're even on information," he said. "I want a fair fight, all out. No mercy from either of us." And he held out a fist. I bumped it. I couldn't help it. I'd spent months hating a file, and the actual person turned out to be the most honest opponent I'd ever face. Then we fought, and it was the hardest fight of my life to that point. The first stretch was skill against power, and his skill was everything the file promised. Little 8 wonders, flawless, chaining 3 C-rank arts in a single exchange, and he hit me 3 times clean. And 3 times my basic body forging method and my furnace condensed kai blood simply ate it. We were a 1/10 of a level apart, and it played like a full level because his 100 short planks each landed on a body built to take them. He figured out he couldn't break me. I figured out I couldn't outskill him. So it became a war of attrition, his water dripping on my stone, my mountain waiting for his river to run low. His river ran low first. He tired, switched to hit and run, tried to roam me the way Guo Yan once had. But I had the instant shadow step now. I chased him down, forced him head-on, furnace flame and triple force, and he deflected it with pure technique, that Mayanyan palm and a dozen others, bleeding off 70–80% of everything I threw. We both hit empty at the same time, and here his years of experience showed against my months. Flaws opened in my form. He cut me. He pressed and drove in for a finger strike to my tanjong to end the whole thing. And at the last possible instant, I let the furnace all the way open. Furnace boiling blood, full overload. Every stat in my body surged past its own ceiling for 2-3 seconds of borrowed impossible strength, and I threw one bow stance thrusting punch into his incoming arm and shattered it. I chased to finish, and Luo Jianfeng, clear-headed even in defeat, threw himself out of the shield boundary to concede rather than take a crippling blow. Winner Lin Chen. We saluted each other, both wrecked, both grinning like idiots. And then Luo Jianfeng, the boy my dad had called a real genius while I sat at 8.6 eating dinner, did the single most generous thing anyone did for me that whole year. He gave me advice, freely, the good stuff, the stuff you don't hand a rival. Go to Star Marshal, he said, take the Easy S scholarship, don't waste your youth grinding for coins. Enter the Federal Youth Martial Arts Tournament as fast as you can, school points buy resources money can't touch. And whatever you do, he said, and he was very serious about this one, never take external faction funding. It brands you for life. Once you're a faction's man, you're a faction's man forever. I want to be clear about this because it's the whole heart of the thing. I'd spent months treating him as the enemy, the golden boy, the symbol of everything the world handed to people who weren't me. And he beat me bloody in a fair fight and then tried to make sure I didn't ruin my own future. My father's real genius turned out to be a genuinely good person, and I've never once regretted losing the ability to hate him. 4 days later, the results posted. Life rating 100, practical 100, provincial rank 1. I was the first top scholar Red River had produced in over a decade. A delivery driver's kid, a boy who'd been furniture first in the entire province. Off the reigning #1, exactly the way Principal Liu had ordered it. The media swarmed. Liu put himself between me and all of it and smuggled me to the airport, and when I landed back home there were banners, and there were my parents, crying again, and I stopped keeping the tally, because some numbers you don't need to count. The Zai family came back one more time, and this time they came big. Through Principal Liu, they made their real offer, fund me all the way to innate martial master. No resource ceiling, no limit, the whole ladder paid for. And I won't pretend it wasn't tempting. Liu himself argued honestly that the martial artist road ahead burns money like a furnace, that even geniuses stall out broke, that resources are the wall poor talents die against. He wasn't wrong, but I had Luo Jianfeng's warning, and under the warning I had something older. My whole family's fortune was the willingness to spend down to nothing on our own effort, and the one lesson that had never once failed me was that the scoreboard only ever rewarded my own sweat. Faction money comes with a leash you can't see until it's already around your neck. I told Liu to phone the university and confirm the points and tournament route first, and he did, and it checked out. So I refused the Zai family. Politely, completely. I found out later what the Zai family had been telling themselves while they waited for my answer. In a room full of their elders, the patriarch, an innate master named Zhu Gang, had laid it out like a man who'd never lost a negotiation. Fund the tan boy to the top. Make the enemy a friend. Time and resources dissolve every grudge. There are no grudges that can't be resolved, only prices, and a delivery driver's son has a very reasonable price. They were so sure of the arithmetic that they'd already picked the words for the press release about their generous patronage of the province's new top scholar. They forgot to carry the one variable they couldn't buy, me saying no. The day after I refused, the sky fell on them. A capital media outlet broke the story. Did the new provincial top scholar have his special admission spot stolen? And it went off like a bomb nationwide, then rolled right back into Dongjiang. And the timing was surgical, dropped in the narrow window after I'd refused their money and before they could rehabilitate their image by generously funding me. Their whole plan had been to look like my patrons. Instead, they looked like exactly what they were, a family that stole a boy's future and then tried to buy his silence and got told no. I didn't leak it. I want that on record. I was a pawn on that board, not a player. Somebody far above me used my little scandal as a knife in a fight I couldn't even see, and the Zai patriarch knew it. He told his hawks to leave me alone, that this had nothing to do with the tan boy, that they should be watching for whoever framed them. And to make the storm stop, the Zai family fed it a body. Councillor Zhu Peng, the man who'd made my spot disappear, resigned his seat and ended his own political career because the paperwork made it technically his personal decision. Public accountability satisfied, storm over, and me. I felt almost nothing, because the lesson underneath it all was the same one principle Liu had shouted at me over a desk. In the adult world, right and wrong matter less than strength. The whole affair, the stolen spot, the media bomb, a career ended to close the wound, none of it turned on justice. It turned on who was powerful enough to force the outcome. I was a chess piece who happened to become famous. First taste of the real game, get stronger or keep getting moved. So I got stronger. I ground the furnace at school through the rest of the summer and pushed the 100 refinements furnace all the way into its getting started realm. No bottleneck, no fight. Just the smooth payoff of a foundation I'd never once cut a corner on. And when the acceptance letters came, all three great institutions offering their top freshman scholarship, I chose Star Marshall University. Partly because it was the only one with recurring, rank-based scholarships, and money still mattered to a poor kid with a loan. And partly, if I'm honest, because Star Marshall had been built on BattleNet's whole reason for existing, a fair shot for people with no name behind them. It felt like mine. Graduation was a strange, warm blur. Zhu Liang squeaked into the institutions at the very last cutoff and nearly cried about it. Wang Hao underperformed and landed a tear down and took it hard. Guo Yan went to Blackstone. Chen Xiaohong, to my quiet delight, was headed to Star Marshall too, and so it turned out was Zhu Quan, who texted me demanding a weapons rematch before I'd even unpacked. I got my admission letter on a stage in front of the whole school, with my parents in the front row doing the thing they do, and then I flew out the very next morning early because every day I wasn't training was a day the mountain wasn't getting taller. Star Marshall University sits in Yuntai City, in the heart of the Federation, on ground people actually call holy. No walls, just a tech city that runs itself, managed by an AI the students called Anna, built around big open classes and self-discipline instead of masters looming over disciples. Which, for a boy whose master had always been a scroll that told him the truth, was paradise. My scholarship came with a private villa in Kaianlong Garden, number 7, with its own training room, a visualization room, and a basement holding an enhanced weapon rack, a top-grade virtual pod, and a gravity regulator that went up to 3 times normal. I stood in the middle of all of it the first night, a delivery driver's kid alone in a villa, and I didn't sleep. I meditated. Sleeping felt like leaving money on the table. In the morning, I asked Anna, a near-military-grade AI, free, that would have cost me 300,000 coins to consult on BattleNet, for a full evaluation. Her verdict was clean. The furnace was my engine, and my faithful old wind-stabilizing spear had hit its C-rank ceiling. It had carried me as far as it could. She recommended its advanced successor, the 8-direction soul-suppressing spear, B-rank, the road the wind-stabilizing spear had always been pointing at, a weapon that fused true intent straight into the blade to suppress, imprison, and destroy. It lived only in Star Marshall's internal library, price 150 points, and my scholarship had handed me 300. I redeemed it before breakfast. Points, I was learning, were the real currency here, one of them worth about 10,000 coins in raw resources, and I just spent half my stash on a spear. Best purchase I ever made, second only to 2 vials of potion on a desk with a note that said keep it up. Anna also flagged something with a deadline. The Freshman Challenge, closing the last day of August. Inside the battle net was a star beast hunting ground, and you cleared its levels at fixed life levels for points and rare rewards. Clear high enough and you took a leaderboard spot in front of every incoming freshman in the Federation. Points I needed. A stage I wanted. I logged in. Level 1 held me at 13 and threw 3 star-spotted wolves at me. Not scripted fighters. Real animals, simulated down to the instinct, no honor, no patterns, no habits I could read the way I read a person. One of them faked a lunge and circled behind me while the other 2 kept my eyes forward, and I felt the third's breath on my neck before I understood it had a plan at all. That was the lesson. Beasts don't fight your technique, they fight your attention. I set my feet, made myself the center of a circle instead of a line, and speared them where the hide goes thin, the eye, the throat, the joint. 4.5 minutes. First blood of a whole new kind of fighting. Level 2, held at 14, was 3 armored lizards, and armor is a language I speak. Each one had exactly one soft place, the pale belly, and the whole trick was surviving the tail and the jaws long enough to flip the conversation to that one word. I took a scaled tail across the ribs that would have folded a normal freshman, planted through it, and put the spear up under the second one's chin while it was still deciding whether to bite. The last one I baited into a lunge and let its own weight roll it belly up. Slower than level 1, but nothing here had a plan, and things without plans die to patience. Level 3 stopped being cute. 10 poison-fanged bats, held at 15, fast enough to be a blur and carrying a venom that clots your blood where it lands, and there is no wall stance in the world that guards against a cloud. So I stopped standing. I turned the instant shadow step loose and became a blur of my own, killing them out of the air 1 and 2 at a time, and I still came out of that cave bitten 5 times, one arm going stiff and cold, breathing like I'd run a marathon uphill. The leaderboard did not ask how I felt. Cleared is cleared. But I logged the feeling anyway, the first time in a while that a challenge had made me bleed for the pass. Then level 4 introduced me to the wall. Held at 16, and it wasn't a swarm. It was one earth-splitting bear, 3 meters of it, with Kai and blood a notch above my own. A super-enhanced level 16, stronger and better armored than I had any right to handle. First real pressure I'd felt since the fire swordsman cut me in half in the Shura arena. And I did the impatient thing. I forced furnace boiling blood while my own Kai blood was under half, gambled the overload, and the bear stomped me flat. Fail, 8 minutes 13 seconds. Here's the part I'm proud of. I wasn't angry. I sat down with Anna, the free AI that would have cost a fortune anywhere else, and I did homework on a bear. Attack intervals. The exact third of a second it staggered after each swing. The way its burst decayed to 70% by the 8-minute mark. My second try, the wear-down, worked beautifully, right up until I got greedy after breaking one of its legs and ate a desperation counterroll. Fail again, and I still wasn't angry because now I had even more data. Third try, I fought it the way I should have fought it from the start. Patient. Hit and run, no hero swings. I broke the hind leg at minute 7, waited for the exact stagger, and only then let the furnace fully open, furnace boiling blood into a 444 spear straight through the skull. Clear 9:15, alone at the top of the board. The lesson was the oldest one I own, dressed up in fur. Not power, patience, plus a machine that tells you the truth about your mistakes until you stop making them. The bear was just the scroll with claws. I stopped at 4, the top of the leaderboard, all by myself, and pocketed 100 points and turned to the spear. The 8-direction soul-suppressing spear did not want to be rushed. Its first move, gathering spirit, is nothing but this. Fuse real true intent into every basic motion of the weapon. Real intent. The panel wouldn't accept a shell, wouldn't let me fake it, and threading the actual mountain into a thrust drained my mind so hard I got dizzy after 10 reps. But then I found the loophole, and it's my favorite kind of loophole, the honest kind. I could practice that same intent fusion by threading the mountain into my old, familiar wind-stabilizing spear instead. Same skill, same proficiency, a fraction of the mental cost, and as a bonus, it made my retired old spear feel heavy with suppression, like every strike came down off a cliff. A sustainable loop. I'd found a way to do the impossible homework by disguising it as the homework I already knew. Word of the leaderboard traveled because it always does. My neighbor in Villa 8, a proud kid named Tan Zhai from Jiangsu, a top 3 martial province which he mentioned early and often, introduced himself politely and then reported me to his cousin, a near-martial master upperclassman. Tan Zhai scoffed at only 4 levels and swore he'd beat it. He went in, breezed through the wolves, ground through the lizards, and got instantly deleted by the poison bats at level 3, never once laying eyes on my bear. He came out of the pod with his Jiangsu pride in pieces. His cousin consoled him. Most freshmen die at level 3, kid, go train. Level 4 wasn't a number after that. It was a rumor people were afraid of. And Zhu Liang called, he'd made it to Star Marshal after all at the very last cutoff, and we sparred with weapons for the first time. He'd built himself a sword and shield defense encounter style, modeled, he admitted a little shyly, on me. I broke his guard in 3 minutes without ever opening the furnace, on condensed Kai blood alone, and then I told him what I always told him. Consider a B-rank body art. Master the basic one first. Keep going, he wanted to walk my road, I wanted him to. I just could never tell him the road had a scoreboard that only I could see. The new spear reached getting started in a matter of days and unlocked its first real feature, soul suppression. An invisible mountain pressure I could thread through any parry to fog an opponent's mind and slow his blade. Zhu Quan, now my neighbor in Villa 10, volunteered to be the test subject, which he regretted. I ran the suppression through every contact while he came at me all out, and even when he threw his 7-kill consecutive slashes, 7 real afterimage strikes with his kill intent behind them, I blocked all 7 and put the spear to his chest. He stood there breathing hard and said, "I trained my dog for years and it still doesn't listen. You learned a B-rank spear in 2 weeks. I told him I'd had the true intent lying around, which was true and also the least true-sounding true thing I've ever said. I cleared level 5 next, the mountain-splitting white ape, held at 17, a near-flawless thing with a Kai blood barrier and a regenerating body and a bone staff. I didn't grind it down this time. I met it head-on, furnace boiling blood the mountain, a stab of soul suppression to stutter its mind, and a triple force spear through the throat. 2 minutes 17. My shoulder shattered doing it, but the board didn't ask about my shoulder. Zhu Quan, who'd fought his way up to the top spot 2 minutes earlier by clearing level 4, watched the leaderboard refresh him back down to number 2, and made a noise I can only describe as a man discovering gravity. Then level 6 broke me. 2 double-edged mantises, held at 18, a body I couldn't fully adapt to, scythe-armed, silent, perfectly coordinated, a matched pair that pincered me from both sides at once. My whole art is built to punish one committed opponent. 2 disciplined attackers with a real level advantage don't commit. They just take turns being the anvil and the hammer. My soul suppression barely dented them. They put me on pure defense and then they killed me, and there was no clever answer, no seed to plant, no trap to spring. It was a plain, honest wall of power I couldn't climb yet. And same as the bear, I wasn't angry. If you're not strong enough, you get stronger. So I went into seclusion to get stronger, and while I was gone, everyone else caught up. What I chased in that seclusion was fire. The furnace's getting started realm ends in a secret technique called heart fire. You fuse divine intent and Kai blood to light an inner flame that doesn't burn a body, it burns a spirit. Where soul suppression only presses on a mind, heart fire attacks it, and I couldn't light it. My spirit and blood wouldn't merge no matter how I coaxed them, and the challenge clock was running out, so I gambled 120 points on an earth fire lotus seed and refined it in the meditation room, and its mellow flame thinned the barrier just enough. The spark caught. A crimson gold ember in my core, my will fused into my blood at last. My furnace leapt in the realm, the heart fire feature came online, and my life level ticked to 17-9. Divine intent, interfering with reality. I was starting to understand why the whole world's martial arts, every school, every path, all eventually turned toward the spirit. I came out of seclusion after 26 days, checked the leaderboard, and found myself sitting at 11th. Out of the top 10 entirely. A Zhangzhou top scholar named Lai Chen had cleared level 6. Chen Lai and Zhu Quan had cleared 5. While I was underground lighting a fire, the whole pack had figured out the white ape's exploit and come surging up behind me. And I want to tell you how I felt because it surprised me. I was happy, genuinely, stupidly happy. For one winter I'd been so far ahead of everyone that fights had started to feel like chores, and a mountain with nothing above it stops being worth climbing. Now there was a whole range up there again, Lai Chen, Chen Lai, a silent one named Lin Hao, real people above me worth catching. My drive had been running low on a diet of easy wins. This was a full tank. I had Anna announce I was out of seclusion, and I went to collect the view from the top of that leaderboard because 11th is a fine place to start and a terrible place to stay. 3 days, that's all I needed. Level 6, the mantis pair that had killed me with all 18 furnace stances now under me and furnace boiling blood twice as strong. I met a scythe with raw force, killed the first in about 10 seconds, and I stabbed the second. 37 seconds, against Lai Chen's 8.5 minutes. That's what a B-rank body-forging art does once you actually feed it. It stops being a fight and becomes a demolition. Level 7 was a nightmare wearing a dog's shape. A shadow fang. A thing that hides inside shadows, any shadow, including the one you're standing in, and my whole first minute in that arena was me turning in slow circles hunting something that wasn't anywhere. Then my own shadow bit me. It opened my calf from underneath my own feet, a wound out of nothing, and vanished before I could turn. You can't defend a place your enemy attacks from inside your own footprint. Mental energy couldn't find it. Nothing could, except a fire that burns spirit. I lit the heart fire and let a ripple of it wash out from me, and I felt the foreign thing crouched in the dark under my own body like a splinter in a familiar hand. So I stopped hunting it in the world and stabbed straight down into my own shadow, and I dragged it out into the light, and out there, exposed, it died like anything else. Mind perception. There's a reason every school in the world eventually ends up teaching the spirit. Level 8 was the last one, held at 20, and it didn't fight like a beast at all. The winged people, 2.5 meters, a flesh shield on one arm and a bone spike on the other, and total ownership of the air. It never landed. It came down, took a piece of me, and was gone before I could answer. And against a thing with air superiority, a mountain is just a large, stationary target. So I stopped trying to catch it in the sky and made the sky unbearable instead. I burned its mind with heart fire until fury drowned its patience, and a furious thing chases, and I let it chase me straight into a low, narrow cave where its wings had nowhere to open. It ran its bone spike clean through my shoulder in the same instant I ran a 444 spear through its neck. Trade made. Mine grew back. And the last simulated beast of the freshman challenge went down in a cave it never should have followed me into. All 8 cleared. 100-point bonus on top. The board posted it in front of the entire incoming class. Number 1, Lin Chen, 8 levels. The winged people had been added to that challenge only recently to teach students what fighting a human-shaped enemy felt like, and it had gone years unbeaten by a freshman. Somewhere in the villas, a room full of the Federation's best young fighters stared at that name and asked the question I was really starting to enjoy. What kind of monster is that? And in a private meeting on the net, 3 campus deans, grown grandmasters who ran the 4 colleges, started watching a delivery driver's kid, and one of them, my East Campus dean, could not stop gloating to the other 2. None of them knew the monster's secret. The monster did his homework, 100 times a day. Every single day. That was the whole trick, and it was hiding in plain sight, and nobody in that building of geniuses would ever have believed me if I'd stood up and told them. My East Campus dean, a grandmaster named Chen Hua, was the first to actually reach out, and he did it with a gift disguised as advice. Clearing all 8 had earned me 3 blood-activating potions, a legendary resource, the kind that shaves months off a normal cultivator's road. Except mine wasn't a normal road. Chen Hua told me plainly what the panel had already implied. My Kai blood was too refined for those potions to do more than a rounding error under 3%. To me, they were nearly worthless. To almost anyone else, they were treasure. So trade them, he said. East Campus first. I posted them, and Zhu Quan pounced before Chen Ziohong could get her message out, and gave me his family's Thunder Sound bone-quenching pill for the 3 of them. A weakened C-grade thing, but bone-forging, and worth every potion to a boy whose whole style is a furnace. I refined it with my kindling bone-forging stance, internal thunder vibration meeting external tempering, and my bones densified better than 20%, and my level jumped to 18. Then I went back into the Star Beast Hunt, off the ranked board now, just for me, and I refought the winged people, the human-shaped thing that had cost me a bone spike through the shoulder to kill the first time. With tempered bones and a body that finally did exactly what I told it, there was no trade this time. No cave trick, no burning its mind, no clever anything. I met it in open air on strength and speed and skill and put a 444 spear through the joint of its wing and then its neck before it could open the distance it needed. 2 minutes and change of pure, boring domination. That's the quiet reward nobody clicks a highlight reel for, going back to the fight that nearly beat you and finding out it isn't a fight anymore. It's just an errand. September 1st, the semester opened. The mandatory course was called Body Forging Foundation, which sounds like a nap, and turned out to be the most important class I ever sat in. The teacher, a quasi-grandmaster named Lai Yuan, didn't drill stances. He dissected the energy network of a B-rank body art at the microscopic level, hidden meridians, the exact nodes, the way to spiral accelerate Kai through a point I'd been muscling past for months. Even Zhu Quan and Chen Ziohong sat there stunned. For me, it was like someone handing over the answer key to the specific problems I'd been failing quietly at home. He also mentioned, almost in passing, that drinking a blood-activating potion on an unsolidified network is just drinking poison, which filed itself away for later. Then he asked me to stay behind. In a little bamboo cottage, Lai Yuan laid 2 fingers on my wrist, did the thing grandmasters do where they read your whole body like a page and saw my heart fire and my bone work instantly. Then he told me who he was. A disciple of Grandmaster Lai Tao, the man who wrote my furnace. The same lineage as Wang Yang, the innate master who'd rubber-stamped my impossible loan. He'd been watching ever since some kid in a nowhere province bought his master's art and started half-mastering it in weeks. And he offered me free private guidance, every Tuesday, one-on-one. The kind of tutoring that costs more points than I'd ever owned, handed to me for nothing because I'd chosen his teacher's furnace and then refused to disrespect it. I nearly hugged him. I did not because he seemed like a man who'd counter it, but that windfall mentor is a chunk of why the rest of this story happened. He wasn't the only teacher I kept. I kept the oldest one, too. Every single day on top of the furnace, on top of the spear, I still ran the humble basic body forging method 100 times. The beginner's art, the one nobody at Star Marshall would be caught dead practicing. And one ordinary afternoon, the panel woke up a line I'd stopped watching years ago and posted the impossible. Basic body forging method, major achievement. Major achievement in the beginner's art usually needs a full level 20 martial artist body. I was 19.3, and I'd done it in a beginner's technique, because a furnace-forged foundation plus Lai Yuan's micro-corrections plus a boy who never, ever skipped his 100 reps adds up to something the textbooks don't have a category for. The old Mountain Guardian feature transformed into a new one, Return to Truth, which sharpened my fundamental understanding of every art I owned or ever would. Return to simplicity, and the foundation emerges. My whole build in 5 words, delivered by the most boring art in the school. Mid-October, the campus packed a hall to hear a lecture I'd have paid my whole point stash for. Grandmaster Wang Yi, one of the Federation's premier sword masters, on the preliminary explication of martial Dao true intent. He laid out the whole road higher than I'd ever been shown. Apprentice refines blood, martial artist refines body, martial master refines spirit. Innate condenses a mind image, a will made real. And then the bombshell, 2 fused true intents make a stronger mind image than one. A dual intent path. I watched Lai Chen and Chen Lai go pale in their seats, because it was obvious their powerful families had never told them this, had kept the map folded, and here it was being handed out free to a hall full of nobodies. I had exactly one true intent, the mountain. Now I had a direction for the second one, and a reason to keep the heart fire's strange, broad, unfighting will in the back of my mind. Zai refused every individual question, figure it out yourselves, and vanished, which I respected enormously. Then in November, a loud problem named Huang Ming decided to make me famous for him. Huang Ming, Xingjing family, top of the points ranking, arrogant in the specific way of a young man who's never once been hit hard enough. He publicly challenged me and the silent Lin Hao, pointedly skipping Lai Chen. And to prove he meant it, he took Lin Hao apart in front of everyone. Lin Hao was a B-rank movement assassin with twin curved blades, and his blades clanged off Huang Ming's skin without leaving a mark, and one golden punch ended it. Huang Ming, it turned out, cultivated the golden jade art, which tempers your very bones to gold and jade, a near-absolute defense that also raises your level. He was secretly 18-9, and suddenly the whole intranet was doubting me. If Lin Hao's twin swords couldn't scratch that golden skin, what was a spear going to do? I accepted with one word. Okay. The betting markets opened. Tan Zhai, my Jiangsu neighbor with the family library, identified the art for me and warned me it needed either same level offense or genuinely penetrating force to crack. I told him every defense has a limit, and I meant it, and I walked into a packed arena to find out where Huang Ming's limit was. I didn't attack. I just stood there and built my divine intent, the mountain, interwoven with heart fire into a field, and let Huang Ming stand inside it. Because Huang Ming, for all his golden skin, had no true intent of his own, no answer for the spirit. He felt a burning mountain pressing down on his mind, and the mind is the one thing gold can't armor, and it buckled. He panicked. Threw everything into an all-in golden punch. And I took half a step and put one thrust into it. Mountain and heart fire and soul suppression stacked into a single point. And it went through the golden body, past it, straight into the mental world behind it. Huang Ming screamed. His golden luster shattered like a dropped bowl, his mind broke, and the system logged him out to protect what was left of him. One half step. One thrust, I didn't even open the furnace. And when my panel had flashed his level on the board, 19-9, secret until that second, higher than Lai Chen, erasing the whole basis of Huang Ming's confidence, I felt the room change. Across the arena, Chen Lai's sword intent rose off her on its own, an instinct, a predator recognizing another one. And Lai Chen, the Zhangzhou top scholar, watched the whole thing without a word and quietly left, because he'd seen enough. That fight did something to me, too. Forcing my spirit and will and blood into one perfect point under real pressure, cracked a door I'd been leaning on. I went home and ground the furnace against the major achievement basic art. Fast fire against slow stone, the perfect cycle, and my Kai and blood flooded my core. And the heart fire refined it into something new, pure Kai blood, dark red flecked with gold. A higher form of the same fuel I'd been burning since I was a nobody at 8. 6. Life energy level, 20.1. Official martial artist. The first one of the entire year in the whole Federation out of my middling East campus. A quarter more powerful across the board in a single leap because a foundation as huge as mine doesn't cross that gate, it detonates through it. A delivery driver's kid. First martial artist of the year. And I'd gotten there the same way I got everywhere, 100 correct reps a day, and a family that would have covered the difference if it hadn't been enough. It was always enough. That was the thing nobody could copy. Being a martial artist unlocked campus missions, and I needed the money because the furnace's appetite had graduated from a subscription to a mortgage. So I took a job in the old town under Yuntai, exterminate a bone-eroding rat swarm loose in the underground pipes, lead a small team, 20 points. My two teammates were a nervous sophomore with a shield and an experienced social martial artist with twin daggers, and they watched me one-punch rats that should have taken a squad, and one of them said working with me was worth more than 10 practical classes. I cleared my whole assigned grid in under 2 hours. Easy money if you don't count the smell. Then it stopped being easy. An alert went out. A mutated rat king, estimated level 22 plus and actually worse, was tearing apart a section a few grids over, and 5 city defense martial artists couldn't break its metallic hide, and reinforcements were 10 minutes out, and a man was down. I sent the sophomore back to report, and ran to it with my dagger woman as a guard, and I got there just as the king reared up to finish the man on the ground. There was no time to close the distance, so I didn't. I threw my spear full sprint, a javelin with the whole furnace behind it, and it crossed the gap and punched into the king's skull and jammed there, and the kill it had been about to make came apart in its jaws. The thing shrieked and swelled, bigger, angrier, metallic hide rippling, and it forgot the man on the ground and came for the idiot who'd stuck a spear in its head. Good, that was the plan, such as it was. I slipped its charge with the instant shadow step, got both hands on the shaft still buried in its skull, and instead of pulling the spear out, I drove it deeper and tore it sideways, every ounce of furnace-forged Kai blood in my arms against a neck the width of my chest. Metal and bone gave at the same time. The Rat King folded and stopped being a king and stopped being anything. The man on the ground lived. The city defense captain thanked me the way you thank someone who's handed you back a life you'd already written off, which, that day, is exactly what I'd done. 50 points and a haul of rare monster materials for a few hours' work. And walking out of that sewer, I made myself say the honest thing out loud. That was luck. Right grid, right second, a king that turned toward me instead of finishing its kill. You cannot build a career on luck. But you can be strong enough that when luck puts you in the room, you're the one who gets to use it. That I could do something about. Zhu Liang came by that week and he was gray. He'd bought a B-rank body art, sunk his savings and his family's money into it, and in a full month he couldn't complete the first move. He sat in my villa looking like a man who'd bet everything and lost, and I told him the truest thing I know, the thing that is the whole spine of my entire story, and I'll tell it to you the way I told it to him. Back in high school, I reminded him, it took us both about a week just to finish the first move of the beginner's body art. A week on move 1. We'd both stood in that training hall equally hopeless, and nobody watching would have bet on either of us. The martial path is a marathon that the whole world insists on running like a sprint, and the ones who wash out aren't the ones without talent. They're the ones who couldn't stand how slow real growth actually feels, who needed the graph to go up every day or they'd quit, and so they quit right before the part where it finally does. I still run the humble basic body forging method 100 times every single day, I told him, still, as a martial artist. As the first-year monster at the top of the leaderboard with an A-rank spear and a furnace in my chest, I still do 100 reps of the art they teach 12-year-olds. Because quantity becomes quality if, and only if, you refuse to stop before the change arrives. There's no other secret. There was never any other secret. Keep going. Use the teachers the school gives you for free. Feel a little better than yesterday, and then do it again tomorrow and again the day after for years past the point where anyone's clapping. That's it. That's the whole thing. I couldn't tell him about the scroll, obviously. But here's what I've come to understand about that scroll, and it's the thing I'd want carved somewhere if I ever mattered enough for carving. The scroll never once gave me anything the 100 reps didn't earn first. It didn't make me strong. It just showed me the receipt for work I was already doing, and let me stop lying to myself about whether a punch was good enough. Anybody could have my life. They just have to be willing to do the boring thing 10,000 more times than the person next to them. Guan left my villa that night with his back a little straighter, and that mattered to me more than any number on any board. The world, meanwhile, kept trying to buy me. Lai Yuan went off to the astral battlefield, the actual war, the Federation against the alien races, a place that eats martial masters. And while he was gone, the Qin family sent an envoy to my door with a number that made the Zai families look shy. 20 million coins a year until I reached innate, no strings, no interference, no throwing matches against their own genius Lai Chen. The only price was serving as a family guest elder on that same battlefield for 10 years after I opened my innate gate. It was staggeringly generous. The Qin family wasn't the Zai family, no grudge, far bigger, genuinely offering to fund a stranger to the top of the world. I refused it. Luo Jianfeng's warning, yes, but under the warning something my own gut had been telling me since the beginning. A martial artist's heart has to be clean. The moment your strength belongs to someone else, some part of your will does too, and my will was the only thing I'd ever actually owned. The envoy left the offer open for 3 days. I didn't need 3 minutes. And the world made me pay for it in the currency the world always uses, other people's opinions. Because the Qin family turned down, simply went and found another poor genius. A quiet southern kid named Lin Hao, the twin-blade assassin, and they poured the same offer into him, and he took it. In 1 month he went up 2 full levels, 17.6 to 20, a rocket ride the rest of us grind a year for, and he said so publicly, and he added generously that the Qin family's first choice had been Lin Chen, who declined. And the intranet lost its mind. Look at Lin Hao, they said, 2 levels in a month. And look at Lin Chen, too proud or too stupid to take 20 million a year, out running errands in a sewer for scraps of points. Choice beats effort, they said. The poor kid finally had his shot at real backing and threw it away out of some peasant's idea of pride. I read all of it, and I felt nothing but certain, in a way I couldn't have argued in a comment thread. Lin Hao had bought altitude. I was still building wings. Altitude is wonderful right up until the day something reminds you that you never learned to fly on your own. And I had a feeling, watching a boy accept a family's money along with a family's leash, that the reminder was coming for him. It was. But that's a fight for later in a different arena, with Lin Hao a beat too slow at the exact worst moment. For now the world called me a fool, and I let it, and I went back to my 100 reps. I did buy one thing when I could finally afford it, an earth fire marrow, an A-grade resource, 800 points, more than my whole stash, earned back with a month of missions. I set it in a rune lamp in my training room, and it filled the whole space with a steady earth fire that fed my heart fire and tempered my Kai blood a third faster. And under that quiet red glow, my new spear finally crossed into minor achievement, and its soul suppression grew into something I could throw without a weapon in my hand, a pressure that could reach out and press on a mind across a room. The mountain in me picked up a new flavor along the way, a weight of dominion, exactly the kind of shift Grandmaster Zai had described in his lecture. My first B-rank art to minor achievement, and of course it was the one made of spirit. Turns out the boy with no talent had one after all. It was just buried under 3 years of homework where nobody thought to look. In January came the departmental competition, and I learned what my mountain was worth when they wouldn't let it rest. The format was cruel, and I loved it. 4 colleges, east, west, north, south, 1 per region, me on east for Dongjiang. There was a team points half nobody remembers, and then there was the elite battle, which everybody does. Each college sends 3 fighters. Round robin, winner stays on. No healing between fights. You win, you bleed, and then you fight the next fresh opponent still bleeding. It is a machine specifically designed to punish the strong for being strong, and I walked into it as the strongest freshman in the school. East drew south first, and my teammates carried the front so I wouldn't have to spend early. Tao Jian went out with his short halberds, a steady, unglamorous defense counterfighter, and he won 2 matches on pure patience before South's second man opened his stomach on a trade, and the winner stays rule started grinding him down. Zhu Quan came in fresh behind him, Zhu Quan, who'd picked up an iron wall defense to go with his killing instinct, and crushed the wounded man Tao Jian had softened. 2 down for South. Then South played their real card, Lin Hao, the quiet, kin-funded assassin, twin curved blades, hit and run, and a true intent nobody had managed to pin down. He didn't try to break Zhu Quan's iron wall with power. He just moved in and out, 5 minutes of small cuts and stolen tempo, wearing the wall thin from 100 angles at once, and when it finally cracked, he put a strike of blue lightning through the gap and Zhu Quan went down. And then it was just me. Fresh against an Lin Hao who'd spent himself grinding through 2 of my teammates, and Zhu Quan's warning still in my ear as they carried him off. He has a true intent. You can't cage him. I wasn't planning to cage him. I didn't try to cage him. I built a room. He came in on that blue lightning charge, and inside 3 meters my soul suppression descended as a domain, not a touch, not a thread, a whole space. The air turned to swamp. A burning mountain dropped straight onto his mind. His legendary speed fell out of him. My kind of art doesn't chase a fast man. It changes the world the fast man has to run through. 1 heavy thrust broke his twin sword guard, and the domain clung to him so he couldn't slip out, and the second thrust ended it. East won round 1 on the back of a boy who fights speed by deleting the concept of speed. The crowd figured out, all at once, what that meant against every quick killer in the building. West and North tried to kill each other in the next slot, and I got to watch, which was educational in the way watching sharks is educational. North opened with Huang Ming because Huang Ming's golden jade body could tank anything, and he was very proud of that. West answered with a girl I'd never seen fight. Hua. West Desert barely reached my shoulder and carrying a black hammer bigger than she was. Huang Ming planted his golden skin and dared her to dent it. She didn't try to dent it. She hit it. The hammer landed and the golden luster held perfectly, and everything inside the golden shell rang like a struck bell, organs and meridians and bone, because a defense against cutting is not a defense against shock. Huang Ming's armor never cracked. The man inside it broke anyway, ribs and an arm, and he folded up around a body that had betrayed him from the inside. Under 3 minutes. I filed that away hard. There's more than one way through a wall, and the ugliest one is just hitting it until the person behind it quits. Then Hua met Chen Lai, and I stopped taking notes and just stared. Chen Lai drew her flowing shadow sword, except it wasn't a sword, not really. It was a strike made of pure speed, a thought that arrives already having landed. It froze Hua mid-charge, blade already at her throat, a fight decided in the space between 2 heartbeats. And Hua, throat under a sword, dying, chose to take her killer with her. A golden divine elephant reared up behind her, a whole B-rank body art's worth of power poured into one suicidal swing, and she brought the hammer down as the sword went through her. Both of them fell. 1 move, and West lost its hammer and North lost its sword prodigy in the same breath. I recognized what Hua was, the only other B-rank body forger I'd ever met. Her elephant the same kind of spirit-made real as my own heart fire. And I understood these were not children I was sharing an arena with. Lai Chen walked out calm and swept up what was left, and West came through. Which meant before the final, East had to get past North, and North meant their 3, and their 3 meant me again. Because here is the thing about a winner stays gauntlet with a fighter like me on the bench. I don't get tired the normal way, the furnace sees to that, so my teammates fed me the whole enemy team and I ate it, 1 wound at a time. Huang Ming first, our 3rd meeting, and he'd finally bought a mental defense art specifically to survive my domain. So I didn't use my domain. I just drew my spear, no pressure, no mind games, plain steel and the passive heart fire that seeps out of my Kai blood whether I want it to or not. And it went straight through his golden skin his fancy new mental shield couldn't guard. And it burned him from the inside, quietly, meridian by meridian. His golden luster guttered out like a candle in a jar running out of air. 1 plain thrust to the throat finished a man who'd been boiled alive by a thing he never saw. It wasn't flashy. It was worse than flashy. It was inevitable. Then Chen Lai, and Chen Lai nearly took me with her. Her mind sword is a strike that skips speed entirely, a thought that arrives already having hit you, and my heart fire steadied my spirit enough to shorten the freeze but not to dodge. Nobody dodges that. So I traded. My spear is longer than her sword. I put it through her heart a fraction before hers reached mine, twisted so her blade wrecked my meridians instead of stopping my heart, and burned her heart meridian shut with heart fire as I did it. I won. I also came out of it barely able to stand, Kai blood sloshing near empty, one rib cut to the bone. And then North sent out their last man to stall the wounded animal, and I was too experienced to be stalled. I disarmed him and put the spear to his throat before he could run out the clock. Lin Chen, 1 against 3, a clean sweep of the entire North roster, and I did it hemorrhaging from a Chen Lai sword wound because the machine wouldn't let me sit down. The crowd went feral. I mostly wanted to lie on the floor. That put East in the final against West, and the final opened by mutual agreement, with the fight the whole tournament had been circling. Me against Lai Chen. Lai Chen, the Zhangzhou top scholar, the boy whose family funded his every step, whose splitting light fleeting shadow sword was real speed and real burst and flawless technique all at once. My domain barely slowed him. His will was too strong, his sword too focused. So we traded, 5 minutes of it, both of us opening wounds, my passive heart fire leaking into his meridians while his sword carved another line to the bone in my ribs. I had to open the furnace fully just to keep pace, and in the end it came down to one flicker. Lai Chen, mid-strike, wondered why. Why a commoner with no family behind him had a will he couldn't break, and what it would mean if all his family's resources lost to a boy who bought his spear on a loan. That wonder cost him a hair of hesitation in an otherwise perfect sword. I put everything left in me through his heart in that hair. Winner Lin Chen, and I nearly died winning it, Kai blood scraped to the bottom because that is what beating Lai Chen costs. Then they sent out Hua, fresh, that giant hammer, that golden divine elephant behind her, and me held together with willpower and heart fire and not much else, one rib already gone to Lai Chen's sword. I couldn't take her head on, and we both knew it. Anyone watching knew it. On paper it was over, so I didn't fight her honestly. I fought her the way you fight someone whose greatest strength is also the button you can push. Hua loves a head-on collision more than she loves winning. It's the whole reason she and I got along. So I gave her the opposite. I faked a suicidal charge, watched her plant to meet it, and then I turned and ran. And it worked exactly because it insulted her. A head-on fighter, denied her head-on fight, stops thinking and starts chasing, furious, and Hua came after me breathing fire. As she closed the gap I spun, and I threw the ugliest technique I own, a crude, stolen, back-alley imitation of Chen Lai's mind sword, no elegance to it at all, just my enormous mental strength wrapped around a fistful of heart fire and flung into her head. It wasn't a real mind sword. It didn't have to be. It froze her for exactly 1 instant. 1 instant is a thrust. I put the spear through her heart, and her death swing, already committed, came down and caved in my chest, and both of us hit the floor together. A mutual kill. And a beautiful trade, because in a winner-stays gauntlet the math is all that matters, and the math was perfect. I was the last card East needed to spend, and I'd spent myself to take West's monster off the board. Zhu Quan was still standing behind me. Zhu Quan, who fights like a man with nothing to lose because he genuinely, sincerely believes he has nothing to lose, walked out against West's last exhausted survivor and took the whole thing on reckless nerve. East Campus, champions of the elite battle. Middling, overlooked, commoner-heavy East, on top of the whole school, and me the reason. 3 mutual kills and a war of attrition, and a body that had been broken and remade a half-dozen times over 2 days of a machine designed to punish exactly the fighter I am. I earned 800 points and a chest full of simulated broken ribs, and a balance that finally, for once, had room to breathe. Afterward, Dean Chen Hua, a grandmaster, a man who could have any answer he wanted just by looking at me, asked the question everyone kept asking. Why refuse the Qin family's 20 million? And I gave him the only honest answer I had, which wasn't clever and wasn't principled sounding and was simply true. I didn't want to. He liked that answer more than any speech I could have made. And then he gave me something back for it, the long view. The school's own points, he said, earned clean, can carry a top student all the way to innate. The resource-paved rich kids look unstoppable now, but watch. They burn so much of their fortune just shaping their first true intent that by the time they reach the top of the mountain, where you have to condense a mind image out of pure will. They've got nothing left in the tank and no idea how to earn more. You've been earning the whole way up, he said. That's not the slow road. That's the only one that reaches the summit. Then he told me to rest and to get ready because in May there was a tournament that only pays out to first and second years, and a boy in my position did not get to miss it. Rest. Sure, I did my 100 reps first. An unfinished assignment itches. Hua and Lai Chen had exposed a hole in me, my footwork, still only beginner, dragging behind everything else, so I dragged it up. Now that I was a martial artist, the C-rank ceiling was gone. And with Anna feeding me the exact 100th of a second delays in my foot perfusion, I pushed the instant shadow step to minor achievement and its speed feature to intermediate. And my level climbed toward 25, where all 206 bones finished tempering. I wasn't the first to 25. Hua got there ahead of me, then the others. The field was catching up, exactly as I'd known it would. A B-rank body art was becoming standard issue for martial artists. My whole lead was a single step, and a single step disappears the instant you stop walking. Then Lai Yuan came back from the war, and the war came back with him. He summoned me to his real residence because he couldn't use battle net anymore, and I understood why the moment I walked in. His right arm was gone. Severed clean at the shoulder, the wound sealed under a writhing membrane of deep blue energy, a concealment aura, which was why I'd never sensed anything wrong about him from across a classroom. He said it was minor. A quasi-grandmaster, one-armed, pouring me tea left-handed, calling it minor. That's when the war stopped being a word to me. All those months, the astral battlefield had been a phrase in a mission board and a place the adults went and came back from. Now it was a man I respected and owed, sitting in front of me with an empty sleeve, telling me the thing that took his arm was a pseudo-legendary beast of the werewolf race, and that he'd been lucky. Lucky. Reattaching the arm would take Grandmaster Zhang himself and a fortune, and Lai Yuan waved all of it away like I'd offered to fetch him a napkin. He asked for exactly one thing. If you ever reach the battlefield, he said, and you meet the werewolf race, kill a few extra for me. I promised him I would, and I meant it in a way I hadn't meant anything in a long time. Up to that afternoon, getting stronger had been about me. My family. The stolen spot, the leaderboard, the number that used to be 8.6. Now it had a direction that pointed outward, past all of that, at a war that was quietly eating the people who kept the lights on so the rest of us could argue about recommendations. He also told me as I left to go back and review how I'd learned the furnace in the first place. I had no idea what he meant. I filed it away with everything else he'd ever said that turned out to matter later. He also told me cryptically to review how I'd learned the furnace in the first place. I didn't understand it yet. Round then the Kaio family, Dong Jiang's first family, 2 grandmasters, one of them a deputy minister of the armed forces, hired me to tutor their prodigy daughter, Chen Xuan, who was stuck getting into the furnace's beginner realm despite 2 innate masters coaching her. 1,000,000 coins for 2 hours, no results required. She was 16, brilliant, sly, and when she demoed the furnace for me it was flawless, perfect form, master-tailored textbook. And I saw her whole problem in one motion. She had the form and no root. So I told her to put the furnace down and go back to the beginner's body art and actually understand every movement of it, the way I had, the return-to-truth way. She looked at me like I'd told her to eat crayons. She tried it, felt a flicker of something in the simulation, and then in the real world her perception was too blurred to feel anything, no Kai blood gain, and with her peers racing ahead she couldn't stand the slowness. She quit after 2 hours and went back to her efficient family art. The Kaio family paid the 1,000,000 politely and ended it. I wasn't bothered. I'd handed her the right road. She couldn't stomach how slow it looked. Most people can't. That intolerance is the whole reason the road stays empty enough for a delivery driver's kid to walk up it alone. I hit level 25, all bones tempered, and I made a choice most people wouldn't. My furnace was sitting at beginner 99%, one push from minor achievement, and I held it there on purpose. Lai Yuan backed me. Rather than rush the realm, I kept accumulating towards something called Heart Fire 9 turns, the deepest, most complete version of the fire, the foundation for everything above it. Slower now, stronger forever. It was, once again, the same bet I always made. Don't cut the corner, even when everyone's telling you the corner is free. Chen Lai recruited me onto a real mission team, herself me, a still awkward but warming Huang Ming, Hua, the silent Lin Hao, and a rare commoner archer named Lin Yu. On paper, murderer's row. In practice, 6 soloists who could barely stand in a straight line together. Our first training sim was a disaster. Hua charged everything. Lin Hao's kills kept landing in the same beast's Tao was already putting arrows into. Everyone fought like they were the only person on the field, because up to now, every one of them had been. And I turned out to be the glue, not because I was the strongest, though I was, but because my whole toolkit is built for holding a shape together. My footwork put me anywhere on the field in an instant. My soul suppression domain slowed a pack down so my teammates could line up clean kills. My mental perception caught the flankers before they arrived. I spent every fight covering somebody's blind spot, and slowly the 6 soloists became a machine, and Chen made me the free-roaming core it ran around. Then we drew a real one, a fresh rift in Linkyu City, half an hour out by aircraft, energy capped around level 26. Military brief beacons to set, a weaker social support team clearing the edges while we took the core, and we took it too fast. We always did. We cut so deep so quickly that the support team behind us got left in open water, and the beasts we'd scattered came back around and closed on them. My perception caught the change in the noise before the distress call did. Chen sent me and Lin Hao. I came around a rock shelf into a 5-person support team getting torn apart, and 2 of the faces were ones I knew. Liu Ying and the nervous sophomore Wen Jai. My very first mission mates, from a sewer full of rats a lifetime ago, one of them already down. I put myself between them and the beasts and cleared the space the way I clear space now. And when it was quiet, Liu Ying looked up at me, a martial artist herself now, and still a whole world below me, and called me Team Leader Tan with tears cutting clean tracks through the grime on her face. That's the part they leave out of the highlight reels. You don't just climb. If you're doing it right, you reach back down while you do. We ran 2 more of those rift clears over the next couple of weeks, 120 points a time, and my balance ballooned in a way that would have made the 18-year-old at 8.6 faint. I knew the window wouldn't stay open. As the year went on, the competition for these missions would sharpen, and the easy assignments would dry up. But for now it was the perfect road for me, the risk priced exactly where a boy with no name and no talent should be willing to gamble. The battles bonded the team, the way shared danger does. I learned Lin Yu, our commoner archer, had quietly been funded by Chen Lai's own family, the Xingjing Chen, which explained his fast climb and made me think again about leashes and who was holding them. And I got closer to Hua than anyone, because Hua only respects people she can hit as hard as she wants, and I was the only one who'd take it and hit back. Hua, in fact, offered me a third way out of my eternal money problem, and it was the boldest yet. Marry into the West Desert royal family. Her prettier sister, she suggested, or her brother, whichever. Resources forever, a whole kingdom's backing, done. I told her earning points was easier, and I wasn't joking to spare her feelings. I turned down the Zai family and the Qin family, and now I was turning down an actual throne, and I felt exactly as certain about the third no as the first 2. The one thing my whole life has taught me, over and over, in every currency the world could offer, is that the only wealth that never lies to you is the kind you sweat for yourself. Lai Yuan got his arm back. Grandmaster Zhang came out of seclusion to reattach it, which tells you something about what a grandmaster's time is worth and where he chose to spend it. And then Lai Yuan gave me 2 gifts in the same week that cracked me open. The first was a teaching, and it landed because I'd hit a wall I couldn't explain. My heart fire had stalled dead at its 7th turn. I kept feeding it more Kai blood, more fuel, more of the thing that had always worked, and it just wouldn't advance. Lai Yuan listened to me describe it and told me my whole approach was wrong. Past the 6th turn, he said, it isn't about quantity anymore. It's about control. You stop pouring in more and you start refining what's already there, taking each single grain of Kai blood and compressing it, purifying it with your mind until the grain of sand becomes a diamond. My weakness wasn't that I lacked material. For once in my life, I had plenty. My weakness was that I'd never had to be delicate, and now delicacy was the whole game. The second gift was a small dark red wooden box sent to me by Grandmaster Lai Tao himself with instructions to open it during cultivation. Sit with that. The man who wrote my furnace, one of the great cultivators of the age, had somewhere along the line noticed the broke kid from a nowhere province grinding his art harder than anyone alive, and had reached all the way down the mountain to put something in that kid's hands by his own hand. I didn't know it yet, but that box held the key to the second half of everything I am. Inside it was a carving, A fist-sized volcano, dark red, carved from some wood that held a grandmaster's true intent the way a battery holds charge. When I touched it during cultivation, I saw it, a vast volcano, and inside it, lava under unimaginable pressure, ordered, compressing, purifying itself endlessly. It was Grandmaster Zhang's whole philosophy handed over as an image. Melt everything, refine everything, waste nothing. And it showed me exactly how to compress and purify my Kai blood with my mind, the way the mountain's mantle squeezes rock into gems. It took 100 failures, but the 7th turn cracked, and the 8th, and then in mid-April, guided by a dead volcano carved in wood, I reached heart fire 9 turns, and my furnace crossed into minor achievement, and my whole body became a true furnace that melts external energy and pours it into the fire. Potions worth half again as much the instant they hit my blood. And at the exact moment of 9 turns, something arrived that I did not order and did not expect. A second martial Tao true intent. Born on its own, unbidden out of me. Everyone had assumed if I ever grew a second intent it would be fire, to match the furnace, melt, burn, consume. It wasn't fire. The word that rose up in me, quiet and total, was burning, not destruction. A conviction that all things are equal before the flame, that everything is fuel, that nothing is too high or too protected to be refined down to what it truly is. It paired with the mountain like it had been waiting for it. The mountain suppresses and endures, the burning refines and transforms. I had 2 now. But I didn't understand why the second one wore that particular face, and Lai Yuan, when he read it off me at a glance, wouldn't just tell me. It came out of your own subconscious, he said. The heart is a sea, and your waking mind is only the waves on top. Your true intent surfaced from the deep water. If you want to know why it looks the way it looks, you have to go down and ask yourself what's actually down there. 2 intents, he said, are 2 angles on the same self. Fuse them someday and you get a mind image. Then he did something enormous. He offered to take me in person to meet Grandmaster Wang Yi, the sword master from the lecture, who turned out to be Lai Yuan's own junior martial uncle. Wang Yi's courtyard was quiet and green and smelled like rain. He didn't lecture me. He drew once a sword intent that asks the heart a question, and it dropped me straight into my own memories. And there I was again, 18 years old and stuck at 8.6, grinding the beginner's manual alone in a room while the TV worshipped a boy with a famous name. My classmates with their potions and their tutors and their inherited legacies, cruising past me a full point a semester while I carved cold stone. And the spot, the 3 great institutions spot I'd won with an S-level score in front of everyone, made to vanish overnight and handed to a girl with the right master, because the Zai family wanted a grandmaster to owe them a favor, and a delivery driver's kid was the cheapest thing on the table to spend. Counselor Zai saying, I'm aware of this, slowly. The 500,000 slid across a desk like a tip. Every unfair inch of it came up out of the deep water at once, all the resentment I'd packed down and covered with jokes and 100-rep mornings, and it filled the whole sky of that illusion, black and howling. And then, behind my mountain, a sun came up. It didn't comfort the resentment. It burned it, a blazing, impartial, rising sun, and where its light fell the injustice didn't get forgiven, it got refined, the unfair order, the stolen spot, the boys who won because of who held them up, all of it thrown into a fire that doesn't care about your name or your family or your patrons, that melts every fighter down to exactly what he actually is and weighs him at that. That was my burning, not revenge. Not hatred, the refusal to accept that the arrangement of the world is the same thing as the truth of it. The mountain is my foundation, my patience, the 3 years I refused to move. The burning is my will to walk into an unfair order and melt it down to something honest. The mountain bears the sun, Wang Yi said. And the sun shines on the mountain. He looked at me for a long moment, an old sword master and a delivery driver's kid, and he said the only instruction he'd give me, never forget the heart you have today. I came out of that courtyard changed in a way that has nothing to do with a level. The furnace's minor achievement had unlocked a visualization method, heart fire refining spirit. You pour your own spirit into the fire and let it burn your soul cleaner, agony every time, and it refines your mental strength. I ran it daily. Between the self-circulating furnace, the 2 earth fire marrows and potions my body now melted at half again their worth, my level came apart at the seams in the best way. 29. Mental strength close behind. First-year monster again at the very front of my whole class. I knew it was borrowed time. I was cashing in the savings of 3 years of never cutting a corner, and the resource-rich would catch up the moment they finally mastered their fancy arts. But I had a son behind my mountain now, and a Grandmaster's 4 words sitting where the resentment used to be, and for the first time the climbing wasn't about proving the TV wrong. It was about being the kind of fire that an unfair world has to reckon with, and I was getting hot. The first time I watched someone die, it was in a mine. Chen Lai called it in as an emergency. An energy mine near Yuntai had collapsed and torn open a fresh astral rift, this one driven by a Grand Commander, beast strong enough to flood the tunnels with monsters at level 28, 30, some of the leaders higher. Confined space, no heavy weapons, martial artist squads only. High risk, high points, and short-handed even with a dozen teams answering. I said yes before she finished the sentence, because by then it wasn't only about points. There were ordinary people under that rock. On the aircraft, Hua told everyone I'd tanked her hammer, and when they read my level 29 against their 28s, the cabin went quiet in the way I'd stopped being surprised by. I volunteered to take the frontal pressure, because a minor achievement furnace makes a very good wall, and Huang Ming, of all people, volunteered to stand next to me. We'd come a long way from him challenging me in front of a betting market. Down in the tunnels, I found out what the furnace was really worth. Level 29 beasts, raw-armored centipedes and crypt spiders and shadow bats, and I killed them barehanded. One punch exploded the first centipede's head. A kick halved the second, an elbow the third, and my fist didn't even split. Hua called me a pervert, affectionately, which from Hua is a term of endearment. I became the arrow tip and we cut deep, fast, too fast, and that was the mistake, because we outran the weaker support teams behind us and scattered beasts closed back in on them. Then something bigger stepped into our path. A mutant crypt spider, level 31 and change, a commander above our pay grade by a whole tier, the human equivalent of a martial master. Chen signaled for backup and told everyone to fall back. I told everyone to fall back and stayed. Somebody had to buy the time, and a minor achievement furnace makes a very good anchor. Huang Ming planted his golden body beside me without being asked, and Hua came in on the other flank grinning like it was a holiday, and the three of us held a commander in a tunnel. I won't pretend I could have killed it clean. I couldn't not then, but I could refuse to lose to it. My soul suppression domain fogged its many-eyed head and slowed its legs. Huang Ming ate the strikes I couldn't intercept. Hua rang its carapace until something inside it thought twice, and we gave ground 1 careful meter at a time, back toward the reinforcements, never letting it commit to a kill. We held it long enough. A martial master squad called Gale arrived, a captain and a fast blade woman, and put the spider down in under 2 minutes, the way grown-ups do it, and then looked at the 3 freshmen who'd stalled a commander and didn't quite know what to say. Neither did we. My mental perception was already screaming about somewhere else, so I didn't get to enjoy their faces. Chen had sent me and Lin Hao off to help a drowning support team a few grids over. We got there. We saved them. Not everyone was so lucky. While we were saving one team, another one, called Grey Rat, ran into a commander-level centipede and got taken apart. 2 dead, not logged out, not reset. Dead, 3 more gravely wounded, and the 6 of us, 6 prodigies who'd only ever died in simulations that gave your body back, stood there in the sulfur and the dark and understood all at once that this was the real thing, and the real thing keeps what it takes. The silence after was the heaviest I'd ever stood in, and I found myself on my feet talking because somebody had to. This isn't for points, I told them. There are people trapped down here under all this rock, ordinary people, and every minute we clear faster is a minute sooner the rescue teams get in. Isn't that the whole job? Isn't that what a martial artist is for? It wasn't a speech. I'm not a speech person. But it put the team back together harder than before, and we ground through 2 more hours, and 3 support teams linked up with us, and we sealed the rift. Up top, there were miners alive because we'd been fast, and there were 2 students who would never be anything again because we'd been fast in the wrong direction first. Both of those were true at the same time. That's the battlefield. It doesn't resolve. Up top in the daylight, with miners being carried out alive on stretchers because we'd been fast, a young martial master came and found me. Yu Fang, the blade woman from the rescue squad, barely 20, and already past the wall that stops most cultivators cold for a decade or forever. She looked me over, this filthy, exhausted first year, and shook my hand and told me plainly that a martial artist who could hold a commander in a tunnel was already most of the way to martial master himself. It was the first time I'd stood next to that tier and had it look back at me not as a promising kid, but as a peer, a colleague, someone it might stand beside on a line someday. She swapped contacts with me and meant it. I went home that night 150 points richer and could not feel the money at all. Two students I'd shared a briefing with that morning were never going home. The miners were alive and the students were dead, and both of those things were true in the same breath, and no reward line on a screen knew how to weigh one against the other. Neither did I. I just sat in my villa in the dark for a while and let it be heavy, because some nights it should be. Zhu Liang pulled me out of that fog without meaning to, just by being himself. He'd finally broken through. Remember the crisis? The boy who'd sunk his savings and his family's money into a B-rank body art and couldn't finish the first move in a month. He'd taken my nagging and his teacher's advice, gone back to the basics, mastered them properly, and then switched arts entirely. Not to something flashier, to something honest, a body method called the undying golden body, built on raw willpower and endurance instead of the delicate kai control and expensive resources that his old art demanded, and his wallet couldn't. It suited who Zhu Liang actually is. Not the most talented, not the best funded, just a man who refuses to lie down. Level 18. Still the bottom of our circle, geniuses lapping him on every side, and completely, genuinely at peace with it. I just want to walk this path steadily, he told me, and there was no sadness in it at all. Feel a bit better than yesterday. That's enough. And I looked at the kid who'd squeaked into the great institutions at the very last cutoff and cried about it, now solid and calm and unbothered by the whole glittering pack pulling away from him. And I understood that he'd finally learned the thing I'd been trying to hand him since high school. And that, standing in the reek of a mine that had just kept two of our own, he turned around and handed it right back to me at the exact moment my hands were empty. Feel a bit better than yesterday. That's the whole religion. That's all any of it has ever been. On the 9th of May, I became a martial master. And I want you to sit with what that sentence means because it's the wall the whole world breaks itself against. I'd been able to reach it for a while, but I'd waited on purpose, held myself at the threshold until my burning intent was perfect, so that when spirit and body finally fused, they'd fuse without a seam, no shortcut, no cutting the corner, the same bet I always make. And then, when I was ready, I crossed, effortlessly. No bottleneck, no struggle, no years of clawing at a ceiling. The martial master wall is the one that separates the people who were actually going somewhere from the people who only thought they were. It's where my old teacher Lai got stuck, and he's still stuck there, a good and dedicated man who gave me everything and simply could not force that last fusion. It stops countless martial artists cold for a decade. It stops most of them forever. Lai Chen's family, with all their money, had assessed him 3 months of guided effort to break through, and that was considered fast. I did it in under a year of university, on a student loan, with no bottleneck at all, because a foundation built one honest rep at a time doesn't hit that wall. It grew up on the other side of it. Level 30. Kai blood circulating on its own through every acupoint in my body, spirit, and flesh made a single thing. A delivery driver's son. The first martial master of the entire year in the whole Federation. Out of middling, overlooked East Campus. From 8.6, the news went off bigger than anything before it. Zhu Quan, still grinding toward 26, looked up at the peak and went quiet. Lai Chen learned I'd crossed the wall naturally, no bottleneck, on a loan and a leaderboard while he was still measuring his own breakthrough in funded months, and something in him understood for the first time that the gap between us was not made of resources. And even Chen Lai, who had never once in her charmed life had to look up at another young genius, looked up. And it didn't stay inside Star Marshal. The other two great institutions got the same intel, Lin Chen, Star Marshal first year, Martial Master level 30. And I found out later how that landed because word travels both ways. At Starry Sky there were two brothers, the Song brothers, capital family, first and second in their whole entrance exam, the pride of their year. They'd been quietly confident they might reach Martial Master by the following autumn. They read that a first year had done it in May, in a school they thought of as a charity case full of commoners with no master-disciple tradition, and the confidence went out of the room. At Blackstone, there was a cold northern prodigy named Han Minjiu who crumpled the report in his fist and added 2 hours to his training that night. Nobody at either school had thought to be afraid of Star Marshal. Now the name at the top of everyone's list was a delivery driver's kid they'd never heard of a year ago. The only one of them who wasn't rattled was Luo Jianfeng, over at Starry Sky, and that was because Luo Jianfeng had bigger problems. He'd mastered 4 B-rank arts as a martial artist and gone looking for something past them, some ancient, dangerous, extraordinary technique, a blood scripture, the kind of shortcut that makes a grandmaster nervous. I didn't know the details yet. I only knew the next time I felt his kai that my father's real genius had put his hand on something that might not let go. But that comes later, and my dean took the news to the principal, a top Federation grandmaster named Ma Chen, expecting to gloat. Instead, Ma warned him. "Don't oversource this boy," he said. "Don't overpraise him. The tallest tree is the one the wind breaks. Heart nature matters more than talent." And he told a story, 60 years old. A commoner super genius, suppressed and humiliated his whole youth, who clawed his way to Grandmaster and then turned his whole enormous strength into a campaign of revenge against everyone who'd held him down, killed a fellow Grandmaster over it, and got haunted by a heart demon born from his own resentment, and stagnated, and died on the battlefield with all that talent turned to ash. Guard his heart nature, Ma told my dean. It was, though I didn't hear it for a while, a warning about the exact fire I'd just grown. My burning could be the sun that refines an unfair world, or it could be a heart demon that eats the man carrying it, and the only difference between the two is what you never forget. Never forget the heart you have today. I was starting to see why a sword master had bothered to say it. I did have one problem left. Martial Master Combat is a different game. You release your Kai blood through divine intent and fight at range, and my whole art was a spear and a domain built for arm's reach. So I built an answer. I forced my Kai blood out and lit it with heart fire, and because my burning intent shaped it, the flame that came out wasn't explosive. It was patient. It caught on an enemy's defensive aura, and it would not go out, it clung, and it burned through, relentless, refining whatever it touched down to nothing. I called it Undying Flame. It was the first weapon I ever made that was entirely, unmistakably mine, and it looked exactly like the thing behind my mountain. Then came the youth tournament, and the youth tournament is where I met the ceiling. It's a Federation-wide brawl for everyone under 25, though in practice the upperclassmen stopped bothering. Only first and second years get the points reward, so it's really a war between the top freshmen and sophomores of the whole world. 6 hours of free matches to seed you, top 500 advance, then single elimination. In the Dongjiang rest area, I got a reunion I didn't expect. Zhu Liang, Chen Ziohong, Wang Hao, Zhao Hua, the old crew, and Guan dropped the news that I was a martial master now, and watched the faces of every kid I'd gone to high school with rearrange. Are they even human? It follows me. I've made my peace with it. The prelims started as a formality because a martial master's aura is its own argument. Match after match, my opponent, a school's top student, a provincial name, level 20-something and proud of it, would step onto the platform, feel the weight roll off me, do the math, and concede before we'd traded a single blow. It's not cowardice. It's arithmetic. You don't spend your body against a wall you already know you can't climb. One of them wouldn't do the math. Wang Gan, a capital family's son, a former provincial top scholar himself, 29 and far too proud to bow to a first year. So he attacked, and I disarmed him with a flick of the spear and put the point to his chest before his own weapon finished falling, and he stood there with the whole thing rearranged in front of him, the boy from nowhere, the rumor, dismantling a top scholar without effort. Too proud to concede, too far below me to make me try. Somewhere in the capital, I heard later, his powerful family read the match report and could not make the name Lin Chen fit into any box they had. Good. I've spent my whole life not fitting the box, and it's only ever been the other people's problem. 20 wins straight into the top 500. And then the free wins ended because the top 500 are all martial masters, and martial masters do not do the math and bow. Martial masters fight back. My first real one was Yang Guohua, a seasoned martial master at 33, iron gauntlets, a man who'd been doing this since before I could spell cultivation. He fought at range, the way martial masters do, Kai blood released through divine intent, palm blasts and fist waves crossing the arena without him taking a step. And I walked straight through them. My furnace-forged Kai blood is denser than a lot of mid-tier martial masters, so his ranged strikes broke on my guard like surf on a breakwater, and every step I took closed the distance he needed and shrank the fight down to the range where I live. Furnace boiling blood, one thrust, and 30 years of experience conceded to 18 months of homework. He phoned a friend afterward to complain about the monster who'd beaten him, learned I was a first year, and somehow found losing both easier and more insulting at the same time. I kept climbing, and the winds started teaching me the shape of the tier. A defense type from black stone, level 32, a wall I couldn't punch through fast enough, so I didn't punch. I painted him in undying flame and let the fire eat his defense from the outside in until he had no wall left to hide behind. A fast sword at 31 who thought speed was an answer to me, right up until my domain turned his arena to mud. One after another, and my dark gold flame started drawing a crowd, because nobody there had a name for it yet. I cracked the top 200, and then I met the ceiling, and the ceiling put me through the floor. His name was Wen Feng, a starry sky second year, level 35, 5 whole levels above me, weaponless, fighting with blood fingers and blood swords. I threw my best thrust, undying flame, and both my intents behind it, and he deflected it with one precise finger, pierced my shoulder with blood swords from an angle I didn't cover, wrapped my clinging fire in a kai blood so resilient it just isolated it, smothered it, and then he tapped my brow and I lost. Cleanly. Completely, like a grown man closing a door on a boy. Then I lost the next 3 too, and each one took a different piece of my pride. A cunning swordsman went first. He didn't fight me. He fed me openings, watched me commit, and punished the commitment, and by the time I understood he'd been reading me the whole match, I was already outside the ring. Then a fast blade who simply moved faster than my flame could catch, in and out, 100 small cuts, and none of them worth answering until suddenly they added up. And then a star marshal senior named Zhu Bin, a heavy sword man with a foundation like bedrock, who took everything I threw and gave it back heavier. He beat me, and then he did the thing the good ones do, put a hand on my shoulder and told me I'd win the whole tournament next year, and meant it, which somehow made it land harder than the loss. Every one of them peeled my undying flame off like a sticker. That was the lesson under all 3. My flame was a newborn, and they'd been martial masters for years, and a deep enough foundation just doesn't let a young fire take root. The weapon I was proudest of wasn't finished, and finished men had all the time in the world to prove it. I want to be honest about how that stretch felt, because the highlight reels never show this part. It didn't feel like failure. It felt like finally seeing how tall the mountain range actually is. For a whole year, I'd been the highest thing in every room I walked into. 4 straight losses reminded me I was standing in the foothills, waving up at peaks I couldn't see the tops of. And God help me, I loved it. A boy who's already at the summit has nothing left to want. I had a whole sky of it again. So I stopped relying on the flame and went back to what I actually am: spear, rhythm, foundation, patience, and I rallied and clawed through a run of martial masters 3 and 4 levels above me, and when the prelims closed, I was ranked 90th. Top 100, the only first year in it. The next freshman on the board was down at 461. A federation-wide sensation, and this time nobody could call it luck. A first year in the top 100 of the whole world's under 25s is not a fluke, it's a foundation. I found Luo Jianfeng in the rest area, and he was different. Reserved, tired. His Kai blood felt unstable to my senses, wrong, and I gathered he was researching some ancient, dangerous cultivation art, and I didn't pry, because he'd earned the right to his own choices, and because prying isn't what you do to a man who once tried to save your future. I just thanked him. Told him his advice about faction funding had been right down to the coin. As a martial master, the Qin family's 20 million a year would have been a rounding error I'd have paid for with my freedom. He gave me a tired smile and told me to keep climbing. I wish I'd said more, but some things you don't know to say until later. Then the single elimination brackets ran, and I ran with them. First round, a level 33 named Liu Meng, solid and unremarkable, and I ended it in 2 exchanges. A soul suppression touch to fog his rhythm, a thrust to close it. No sense spending anything I didn't have to. Second round, a twin dagger fighter at 30, fast hands in close, exactly the kind of quick killer my domain is built to strangle. I let the air around him turn to swamp, watched his blade slow, and put the spear where a slowed man leaves his heart. 2 rounds, almost no damage, and I could feel the crowd deciding I was more than a prelim's curiosity. Third round was the real test. A star marshal senior named Lai Dong, ranked 100th, dual hammers, 4 levels above me, and every one of those levels made of muscle. And I just watched in the departmental what hammers do to people who plant their feet, so I didn't plant. I danced him. Instant shadow step, in and out, never once trading a block for block, and every time I brushed past, I left a little more undying flame on him. A lick here, a lick there, nothing dramatic, just a fire that would not go out. He chased me for dozens of moves, swinging at afterimages, and the whole time his own Kai blood was quietly burning away under his skin. By the end he was heaving, hammers dragging, and he threw up his hands and said my flames were too unfair. Which fair? I've never claimed to fight fair. I've only ever claimed to fight until it's over. Top 64. A first year in the top 64 of the whole youth tournament passed a senior 4 levels higher. And that was where the bracket handed me the thing it had been saving. And then the bracket gave me Liu Xin. Number 1 seed, Blackstone second year, level 37 and change. The favorite to win the entire tournament, and everyone in the arena groaned in sympathy when they saw the draw because they knew, and I was about to. She was gracious about it, told me kindly to come back next year. I didn't want kindness. I wanted to see how far my mountain and my son could reach, so I attacked with everything I had ever built: furnace, boiling blood, undying flame, the mountain and the burning stacked into one spear that I have used to end commanders. Liu Xin drew her sword once. I never saw the cut. There was no clash, no shock, no pain. She used a technique called birth and death, and it doesn't fight your speed or your power. It steps around them entirely, touches something underneath the world, the rules of the place, and the world rippled, and I was simply standing outside the arena boundary, defeated, whole, untouched, and comprehensively beaten. No wound, no sensation. Just a result delivered from somewhere I couldn't follow. Defeat, top 64. I stood outside that ring with my whole body intact, and my whole understanding of strong rebuilt from the studs. What a fast knife. Not fast like Lin Hao, not fast like Chen Lai's mind sword. Fast like an answer that arrives before you've finished asking the question. She went on to win the entire tournament without needing a second cut against anyone, and I went home ranked 64th in the world among people my age. A glorious result for a first year, and completely certain of 2 things. 1, that there were heights above me I could barely see the bottom of. And 2, that I very badly wanted to see what 100,000 more correct reps would do against that one cut. The Federation lost its mind over me, first-year martial master, top 64. And in a manner far away, the Zai family read the coverage with dread, because my rise kept lighting up their blindness. And the patriarch remembered that old story about the suppressed commoner genius who became a grandmaster and then a monster, and decided to wait for a day I might be down, so they could be there to help, and buy back some goodwill. I didn't know about that yet. I was busy spending my 64 points. The reward for a top 64 finish was enormous, 1,600 points and change, more than I'd ever held at once, and I knew exactly where it went before I'd finished counting it. Straight into the one thing that had failed me against the ceiling, my weapon. Liu Xin hadn't beaten me because my spear was slow. She'd beaten me because my spear couldn't reach where she was fighting, up in the place where speed and power stopped mattering. I couldn't buy that place, but I could buy the road toward it. An A-rank spear technique. The Jingxian spear, spirit and power fused into one, with a feature called God-splitting. Attach a mental imprint to your Kai blood, then detonate it on contact, so a single thrust lands a physical wound and a mental shock in the exact same instant. Both Anna and Lai Yuan took one look and said the same thing: it was made for me. My 2 true intents already give me a spirit far past my level, and God-splitting braided into the undying flame like they'd been designed together, because the undying flame is itself a spiritual imprint, a fire that won't go out because it burns on will instead of fuel. Stack the shock onto the flame, and you don't just hurt a body and a mind at once. You set both of them alight and walk away while it spreads. An A-rank art is a different animal from a B. Far harder, far deeper, a wall where a B-rank art was a hill. So I did what I always do with a wall too big to take in one piece. I broke it into pieces, and I ground at the pieces slowly, one honest rep at a time. Slowly is fine. Slowly is the only speed I've ever had. It's just that mine never stops. The best thing to happen that summer had nothing to do with a fight. At my weekly session with Lai Yuan, there was a new student, Chen Xuan, the prodigy who'd fired me as a tutor. She'd become this year's Dongjiang top scholar, chosen star marshal, and was now Lai Yuan's other furnace student, which made her my junior sister. And in 2 months she'd mastered furnace moves 1 through 5, because she'd finally taken the advice to go back to the beginner's body art, except she hadn't taken it from me. She'd taken it from Grandmaster Lai Tao, who, When her family asked him about her bottleneck, told her to practice the basic body art 200 times a day and feel the subtlest flow, and the block would clear in a month or two. Word for word what I'd told her, and she'd rejected. Now, from a grandmaster, she believed it. She teased me, "How long did it take you?" "A month for the furnace flame," I admitted, ashamed, and she nearly fell over because a month is absurd, and I had to remember that the thing I think of as slow, the rest of the world thinks of as impossible. The poor boy had been right the whole time. It just took a grandmaster's voice for anyone to hear it. But an A-rank art has an A-rank appetite, and my points were bleeding out. Concentration potions, life potions, 2 earth fire marrows, thousands of points a year just to stand still. I was a sophomore now, no holidays, and I needed a big score. So I went looking for a dangerous one, and I found it. Escort a research team for 10 days in the Tiangong star realm, a newly discovered fragment plane, 300 points. Life level capped at 35. Native beasts up to level 40, and one line in the briefing that made my blood go cold and still, werewolf race activity detected. Kill a few extra for me. I took the job. There was an interview first, and the interview was a fight. The examiner was a martial master named Wuyi, a safety officer holding himself at 33, and there were 3 other applicants, all older, all martial masters, and every one of them looked at the 31-year-old first year in the room and did the arithmetic out loud. Then they went in against Wuyi one by one and lost. The best of them lasted 30 moves. I'd never used the Jingshan spear against a real martial master. This felt like the moment to start. Wuyi opened at range, the way they all do, and I let him, and the first time our Kai crossed, I threaded a god-splitting imprint onto his own guard and detonated it. The mental shock hit him from a direction he had no wall for, a spike driven straight into the spirit, and for a heartbeat his flawless defense simply forgot what it was doing. 1 heartbeat is a thrust. I put the spear to his throat. He reset, came again more carefully, and I did it again, froze him, tapped his brow, let him feel how completely the fight belonged to me. 3 rounds, 3 freezes, 3 touches that could have been kills. A kid they'd all written off, dismantling a grown martial master with a spear he'd owned for a couple of months. Wuyi lowered his hands and accepted me on the spot, and I caught the exact instant the other 3 stopped looking down at me and started looking up. The star realm was another world, literally dark purple sky, 2 pale suns, heavy gravity, red and green alien forests, a 240-hour clock ticking down over everything. And I discovered out there that my undying flame had a second use nobody had told me about. It disintegrates a star beast corpse to ash, erases the blood scent that draws bigger predators. Out there, where the beasts hunt by smell, a fighter who leaves no trace is worth more than a fighter who kills fast. The team started to rely on it, and on me. 4 days in, my spirit sense caught them, 3 to 5 stealthy shapes a kilometer out that didn't move like beasts. Werewolves, if they got a warning back to their pack, the whole mission was finished, so I volunteered to take them out alone because my footwork made escape safe, and because the camp needed the examiner more than it needed me if this was a diversion. I scouted, 5 of them, 4 ordinary warriors and 1 werewolf warlord at around level 33, which is a human martial master with fur and worse manners. I suppressed my Kai to nothing and crept in. I opened with a god-controlled thrust at the warlord's heart, and its reflexes were unreal. It twisted, blood-clawed my spear aside, and my whole arm went numb from the block. So much for the ambush. But an interrupted ambush is still a head start. I detonated the god-splitting imprint I'd left on it, and the mental shock staggered it, and I put undying flame into its shoulder where it caught and held and started eating. 1 furnace punch killed the nearest warrior outright. I seated another lunging warrior with the flame, and then detonated the imprint inside him too. The mental shock and the fire hit at once and melted him to ash. Right there, and the other 2 froze in pure animal terror at watching a comrade become nothing. That fear was all I needed. Furnace boiling blood, a Jingshan thrust through the warlord's heart, and it melted around my spear. Then I ran down the last 2 before they could carry the news anywhere. 5 werewolves alone in under 3 minutes. And then I did the thing that mattered more than the kills. I burned every trace, every corpse, every drop to ash with the undying flame. 3 hours later, a heavier werewolf squad, 5 warlords this time, swept through that exact spot looking for their missing scouts and found nothing. No bodies, no blood, no trail. Cold, they never knew we existed. Wuyi looked at me a little differently after that, And I understood that out here, cleverness keeps more people alive than power does. Back at the outpost, I met the people who actually hold that line, and they rearranged something in me that no lecture ever had. They were permanent martial masters, stuck at level 35 on purpose. Because the teleport that brings you home from a fragment plane only works below 36, break through, get stronger, and you can never go back. So these men and women had looked at their own next breakthrough, the thing every cultivator in the world claws toward, and chosen not to take it. Chosen to cap themselves forever on the far side of the universe, guarding a plane most of the Federation will live and die without ever hearing the name of. No parade waits at the end of that. No statue. Just a quiet, permanent no to their own ambition so that people they'll never meet can sleep. I'd thought I understood what strength was for. I understood it a little better after standing in a room full of people who'd traded their ceiling for a wall the rest of us get to live behind. And I met Lao Hu. Scarred, level 35, the outpost's record holder for warlord kills, a black crossbow and a pair of daggers, and a lifetime of things you cannot buy with points. He looked at me, a soft academy kid with a fancy spear and a clean record, and instead of resenting me, he taught me. The thing the textbooks can't. Mental shock lands on ordinary wolves easy, but a high warrior has a will like an iron bar, and you can't just throw the shock at that and expect it to stick. You wait. You watch, you find the half-second its will is busy with something else. A swing, a fear, a decision, and you throw the shock into that gap and only that gap. Timing over power. Patience over force. It was, of course, the same lesson a bronze scroll had been teaching me since I was a nobody at 8.6, just spoken in a harder accent by a man who'd earned it in blood instead of homework. I used it 4 days later. The research wrapped early, a researcher took a poison thorn, and we'd overcollected anyway, and on the way back a distress call came in. A squad called Pioneer 7, ambushed by 5 werewolf warlords, 2 already dead. Lao Hu's rescue team was scrambling. Wu Liang had to go, and the professor insisted I go too because the last stretch home was safe, and more force meant more people pulled out alive. We found Pioneer 7 getting ground down in a rocky bowl. 2 martial masters and 3 researchers left, backs together. 2 of their people already down and still. 5 warlords circling and taking their time the way things do when they've already decided how it ends. Lao Hu's lesson was still warm in my ears. You don't throw the shock. You wait for the half-second the will is busy, and then you throw it. So I didn't announce myself. Wu Liang did that for me. He came in loud and high, a wall of noise and blade, and every wolf head turned toward the obvious threat. And in the half-second all 5 wills were busy with him. I came around the back of the bowl silent as my own shadow, and put a god-splitting thrust through the rearmost warlord before it knew the field had a second predator on it. 5 against 3 became 4 against a lot instantly, and the whole shape of the fight tipped. The pack leader felt its formation break and went berserk, and it came for me because I was the one who'd broken it. It closed the distance in a blink, all claws and fury, and a crossbow bolt took it through the forehead from 20 meters out, Lao Hu's, from a shelf I hadn't even clocked him climb to, and in the stagger my flame slash took its head off the rest of the way. Neither of us could see the other set it up. We just both knew the shot was coming, the way 2 people who have fought the same enemy long enough start finishing each other's sentences. The last 3 didn't last a full minute after their leader dropped. But Pioneer 7 had lost 2 people before we ever arrived, and no amount of clean finishing brings those back. We honored them where they fell. Lao Hu clapped my shoulder and told me I was ruthless and smart, that I'd known to flank, known to wait for the moment, which from him was the highest praise going. And when the mission settled, they paid me 650 points, more than I'd ever held, for 10 days of the closest I'd ever come to dying. Lao Hu's parting line has stayed with me longer than the points. Kid, stay alive and get stronger. Wu Liang flew me home, and both of us, I think, loved the peace back in the Federation a little more fiercely than we had before, because we'd finally seen up close what it costs and who pays it. Anna informed me that in the 10 days I'd been off-world, not one other student in my year had reached Martial Master. Still the only one. My edge wasn't talent or money. It was years of foundation built on almost nothing, and the resource-rich were about to slam into the same wall that had held my old teacher lie for a decade. Points, meanwhile, were suddenly no problem, 1,800 and counting, and I made a note that risking my life on the alien planes suited me perfectly. A boy with no talent and no name has to be willing to gamble the one thing he does own, and the payout scales with the wager. The life-or-death werewolf fight had even cracked the last stubborn 5% of my Jinxian spear into getting started, and given it a feature I named Thorn, a burning spark that pierces spirit and matter at the same time, punching a tiny smooth hole clean through an alloy dummy with a spiderweb of cracks around it. My own thing from the very start. La Yuan studied the thorn and told me it was edging toward a third true intent, and then told me not to chase it. True intent is quality, not quantity. He said, masters fuse a few core intents, they don't collect them like stamps. And he was right, because the thorn wasn't a new thing at all. It was just what naturally happens when you press the mountain, which concentrates to a single point, together with the burning, which penetrates and refuses to stop, out through the tip of a spear. I stopped reaching for a third intent and started weaving the two I had, and everything got sharper. Anna also showed me a locked door. My heart-fire refining spirit visualization gave me no epiphany, and it turned out that was because it was only the first volume of the furnace's spirit section. There was a second, heart-fire concentration, that condenses mental energy into a mind-image prototype, the actual key from martial master to innate. It was locked behind mental strength 37. I was around 30. I could have forced it early. It would have been inefficient, expensive, and risked frying my own mind, and forcing a corner is the one thing I have never once done, so I closed the door and decided to raise my mental strength the honest, brutal way instead. Some doors you earn the key to. And then I found a new floor to the oldest room in my house. I'd been assuming, for 2 years, that 100 correct reps a day was the ceiling of my cheat. 100 one epiphany done. But I'd never actually tested the assumption, and one day I got curious. What if I did more? So I took the humblest art I own, the beginner's body forging method, the one I've run 100 times a day since I was a nobody at 8.6, and I just didn't stop at 100. 100 gave the epiphany, same as always. Then nothing for hundreds of reps, my arms screaming, 8 hours of it, and I nearly quit a dozen times. At exactly 1,000 valid reps, the scroll rang a bell I had never heard. Today's effective cultivation has reached 1,000. Great enlightenment. If an epiphany is a spring, this was a river in flood. It didn't hand me technique or a percentage. It dropped me straight into the mind of whoever created the art in the first place, showed me why every single motion was built the way it was built, let me understand foundation itself as the origin that every other art in the world grows out of. And the panel posted the thing I'd stopped believing I'd ever see on that particular line. Basic body forging method, perfection. The absolute cap, on the beginner's art. The one nobody at Star Marshall would be caught practicing, the one for children and no talents. The one I'd never once skipped, perfected. Its feature settling into return to truth, no percentage left to climb because there's nowhere left to go. My body reorganized itself down to the cellular level. Control I'd never had, 30% more power out of the same motion. 8 hours to do it, and I had to crawl into a recovery capsule after. And it was worth every collapsed muscle, because the thing everyone throws away the moment they can afford something fancier turned out to have a perfection hiding at the bottom of it that almost nobody on Earth has ever bothered to dig for. That's the whole story if you want it in one image. A boy who couldn't move a needle, who got handed a scroll that only ever showed him the receipt for work he actually did. Sitting alone in a villa 1,000 reps deep into the most boring art in the world. Reaching the mind of a master because he was the only person patient enough, or poor enough, or stubborn enough, to keep going long after everyone smarter had stopped. 100 punches gave an epiphany, 1,000 gave a great enlightenment, and I suddenly had a whole new frontier of homework to do, and God help me, I was thrilled about it. So I ran experiments on my own cheat the way you'd stress test a bridge. First, which arts could even take the 1,000? Not many. My mind gave out long before 1,000 reps of the spirit-heavy spears. The Jinxian spear would have cooked my brain at 400. The ones that worked were the deep, near-instinctive arts, the basic body method, the mountain-moving method, the furnace's short beginner moves, the muscle memory arts, the homework I could do in my sleep. Second experiment, does a great enlightenment scale with the art? I tried the mountain-moving method to 1,000, 20-some hours of grinding a mental mountain to dust, and got a great enlightenment so weak it was almost a joke. A little refinement of my mental energy, no leap, and a whole day gone. Because the mountain-moving method is a shallow pool, and you can't pull a river's worth of understanding out of a puddle no matter how hard you pull. The depth of the payout is the depth of the art. So I aimed it where the water was deep. 10 straight days, 1 furnace move a day, 1,000 reps each, my whole body screaming by hour 6 every single time, 10 great enlightenments, and my 100 refinements furnace jumped nearly 8%. Faster than any grind I'd ever done, and on a B-rank art. Because a great enlightenment doesn't hand you a bigger epiphany. It hands you the mind of the master who built the thing, why every stance is shaped the way it's shaped, what Grandmaster Zhang was actually thinking when he decided a furnace body should breathe like that. I stopped studying the furnace and started seeing it from the inside, the way its author must have. From learner's eye to creator's eye. It was brutal, it only worked on arts I'd already mastered, and it was a booster and not a way to live, so I went back to my normal rhythm. But I'd found another floor under the floor. There always seemed to be one more, for anyone willing to keep digging long past the point where it stops being fun. Which, if you've been paying attention, is the only thing I have ever actually been good at. Then Teacher Lai called and Principal Liu, and they asked me to come home. He was still, after all these years, only a prospective martial master. I'd sailed past my own teacher, and neither of us ever said it out loud, and neither of us needed to. They wanted me to come speak to the new freshman at Hong number 1, the one sitting where I'd sat, mediocre report cards and no famous names. I hadn't been home in over a year. I booked a flight, and I bought gifts, good tea for my dad, a warm scarf for my mom, and I flew back to Red River City with my martial master aura tucked away so I'd look like an ordinary student walking through an ordinary airport. My parents didn't know I was coming. My mom cried, which by now you could have predicted, and then she cooked everything I'd ever liked, all of it at once. My dad opened the beiju and made a toast and got about 4 words in before his voice went. They were doing better now, the top scholar bonus had softened their whole life, and I caught my dad quietly setting money aside. And when I asked, he admitted it was for my wedding someday, and I told him to spend all of it live, I'd provide soon. That night I cultivated in my childhood bedroom under the glow of the earth fire marrow, on the same floor where I'd once carved cold stone at 8.6, and I thought about the boy who used to watch Luo Jianfeng on that television and ache. He was on television now. He didn't ache anymore. He just missed his mother's cooking when he was away, which is a much better problem. The speech was the truest thing I've ever said in public, so I'll give it to you close to how I gave it. I stood up in that packed auditorium in front of a few hundred kids from families like mine, and I told them the only reason I had anything worth saying was precisely because I had nothing. No ancient family. No medicine baths. No inherited legacy, no tutor, no name. I was stuck at level 8.6 in this exact building not that long ago. People love to talk about talent and resources and destiny, I said, and all of that is real and none of it is yours. What's yours is the one thing nobody can hand you and nobody can take, your own work. Perfect every single movement of the most basic art until it's part of your bones. Treat every fight like your life depends on it, because someday it will. And if doing it once isn't enough, I looked out at all those ordinary, hungry faces, then do it 1,000 times. We have nothing but hard work, I told them, so we can only work harder. They stood up. Some of them were crying, and I understood exactly why, because I'd have cried too at their age if somebody who'd actually climbed out had come back and told me the door wasn't locked. That's the whole reason I said yes to the trip. Not for the applause. For the one kid in the back row at 8.6 who needed to hear that the boring, endless, unglamorous grind is not the thing standing between you and the top. It's the road. I stayed the weekend, played chess with my dad and lost on purpose about half the time and honestly lost the other half. Ate my mom's cooking until I couldn't move. Watched a martial arts broadcast with them where I was, briefly, one of the fighters on the screen, and my parents pointed at the TV and then at me and laughed like it was the best joke in the world. It kind of was. No matter what I did out there, in that apartment I was just their son, and there is no level high enough to be worth more than that. Saturday night, 9 o'clock, the emergency alert went off on my communicator. A level 2 astral rift was opening at the border between Red River and Yingang. Medium grade. Controllable, the bulletin said. It summoned every martial artist above level 26 and every registered martial master within 2 hours, voluntary, federal merit rewards. Lai Guang messaged me almost immediately. A level 2 rift is nothing to walk into casually, and I was a student, and there was no pressure, and he wanted me to know that. I looked at the alert, and I looked at the closed door of my parents' bedroom, where my dad's snoring had already started, both of them asleep and safe and proud, and completely unaware that the sky was tearing open 45 kilometers from the beds they were sleeping in. I typed back 2 words, "I'm coming." Then I got up, quiet as I could, and I geared up the meteorite spear, the life potions, the protective lining under my clothes, and I did not wake my parents, because there was nothing to tell them except a thing that would only frighten them, and I've spent my whole life trying to spend their fear down to nothing. I laced my shoes in the dark. I let myself out, and I went to go stand between my hometown and whatever was about to come through that hole in the world. The boy who couldn't move a needle was going to war for the 2 people who'd bought him the chance to try. Some homework you don't get to skip. The Red River Martial Arts Bureau had a line out the door. Grim middle-aged men in every style of uniform, weapons on their backs, the weakest of them an advanced martial artist, plenty of them martial masters. I got in line behind a buzz-cut man who took one look at my young face and told me kindly to stay close to the group tonight, that a level 2 rift is no place to overreach. I thanked him. When I reached the scanner and pointed my communicator at it, it read me out. Level 31.9, Registered Federal Martial Master. And the staff member looked up at me with the exact expression I'd been collecting for 2 years, the one that keeps checking your face against your number as if one of them has to be a lie. Deputy Director, he recognized me from the college entrance exam. "A year and a half," he said, staring. "A year and a half and you're a martial master." I told him I'd had some experiences at school, which is one way to describe it. And because I was a martial master, the rules put a team in my hands, 8 advanced martial artists, led by a scarred veteran named Gao Hai, who was gracious enough not to say out loud what he was thinking about being handed to a kid. I told him honestly that I had no experience commanding and would need him for that. It softened everyone up a little. On my way to the assembly point, I passed Teacher Lai and Teacher Zhu, both geared for war, and he gripped my shoulder and told me to be careful, and I heard him say to Zai behind me, "Lo, that child is growing up too fast." He wasn't wrong. I just didn't have time to feel it yet. They sent my team to hold the northeast entrance of the valley, B3, a 30-meter gap with steep walls, the kind of place things funnel through. We set up and we waited, and the humming from the rift got louder, and then they came. Blade-toothed beasts. Wolf-shaped, bigger than wolves, bone-armored, blade-limbed, green eyes coming out of the dark in a flood. 5 of them first, testing the entrance, and then more behind, wave after wave with no gap to breathe in. And here's where 1,000 boring mornings paid a dividend nobody in that valley could have understood. A perfection-level foundation turns a martial master into something a pack of beasts simply cannot solve. I didn't fight them so much as edit them out. A spear to the eye, a spear to the joint, every motion the exact one the moment required and not a fraction more, because the most basic art in the world had become the way I move. And I didn't just hold my own corner. I ran the line. I called the corrections to my 8 the way Teacher Lai used to call them to me: attack the joint, take the eye, stop swinging at the armor, and I watched a scared handful of advanced martial artists turn into a unit. 4 waves. Their spacing tightened, their nerve came up, and the way they looked at me changed with every clean kill, from who handed us to a kid to something closer to stay near the kid. Then a sword light fell out of the mountainside and cut 3 beasts in half at once, and Wen Jing landed in front of us. Wen's cool older sister, the Yingang genius, home from Star Marshal and here holding her city. She recognized me, and her eyes did the thing everyone's eyes do now. "A year and a half ago you were a high schooler," she said. "Now you're a martial master." She didn't finish it. She didn't have to because the rift chose that exact moment to stop being a level 2 rift. The alert screamed across every communicator at once. Commander class transmigration, high energy life detected. And out of the dark came 5 red-armored commanders, blade-toothed beasts the size of trucks, dark red carapace, roughly level 37 each, armor that a good sword struggles to scratch. They came fast and they came smart and they came straight for the weakest link in my line. The 3 rookies in the center who'd never done this before, whose blood ran freshest, whose guard was thinnest. Wen Jing was tangled with 3 ordinary beasts and couldn't reach them. Gao Hai shouted a warning that arrived too late to matter. I was faster than the warning. I don't remember deciding to move. One instant I was on the rock. The next I was standing between 5 charging commanders and 3 kids who were already flinching from a death they couldn't dodge, and the meteorite spear was in the air. The first one never slowed down. It came in mouth open, and I put the spear straight down its throat, undying flame off the tip. and the dark gold fire took the inside of its skull before its body understood it had died. It slid to a stop at my feet, still trying to bite. Then furnace boiling blood, full overload, everything I'd built in a year and a half coming out at once, and time did the thing it does when there's no room left to think. Second one, from the left. God-splitting, I detonated the mental imprint and its charge stumbled mid-stride, and I stepped inside the stumble and drove the flame-wreathed spear through the seam over its heart. Third one already on me before I'd pulled free, so I didn't pull free. I let go of the spear and put a bare furnace fist into its breastplate, and the carapace cracked inward and the whole beast folded around my knuckles and went down. Fourth one I took by pivoting off that punch, spear back in my hand on the turn, a thrust up under the jaw and out the crown. The fifth one saw the other four die in the time it took to close the distance, and something in it hesitated, one animal heartbeat of doubt, and I have spent my whole life turning single heartbeats into kills. Under 20 seconds, 5 Commander-class star beasts on the ground, dark gold fire guttering on all of them, and the whole line around me gone dead silent. Because what they'd just watched was not a fresh martial master's work. It was a veteran's, 10 years of it, and I was neither 10 years nor a veteran, and every one of them knew it, and so did I, and there was no time at all to say a word about it. "Sister Tan," I said, already turning, "hold B3. My spear's better at armor. I'm going where it's worse." And it was worse everywhere. The communicators were drowning in it. B1 collapsing, C2 collapsing. Martial masters falling, one call sign at a time. So I ran. I pushed the instant shadow step past anything I'd ever asked of it. A dark streak through a valley lit up like a slaughterhouse, and I went sector to sector doing the one thing I was built for. B1 was a slope on the west side, and it was already a graveyard. 6 martial artists left standing against 2 red-armored commanders, 2 bodies on the ground, a shield man taking a charge on a heavy alloy plate and getting driven back with blood on his mouth, and a young woman off his flank, too slow to dodge the claw already swinging at her. I threw the spear like a javelin before I'd finished arriving. It went through the first commander's eye and out the back of its skull, and the undying flame took the inside of its head, and it was down before the woman finished her flinch. The shield man shouted that reinforcements had come, that it was the martial master, and I was already past him, meeting the second commander head-on. It swung a bone blade twice as fast as anything should move that size. I let it hit my spear instead of me, felt my whole arm go numb, and answered it the only honest way, furnace boiling blood. A thrust through the seam where the breastplate meets the throat. The flame poured in wild, and I got both hands on the shaft and slammed 3 tons of dying beast into the mountainside until it stopped. There was a team leader on the ground with a hole in his chest, still breathing, a man named Wenbo. I got a life potion into his throat and told him to conserve his strength and stop talking, and I left him to the woman to carry back, because I could already hear C2 dying in my ear. C2 was worse than B1. C2 was 3 commanders standing over the people who used to hold it. I came in from above and pinned the first one to the ground through the back of the neck on the way down, and then I stopped counting the moves. A knife fighter there, half his squad gone, stared at me between strikes and got out one disbelieving sentence, that I was the star martial kid from the youth tournament broadcast, the first year who'd cracked the top 64. And I could see him trying to fit that clip, the boy on the screen, into the thing in front of him soaking a valley in dark gold fire, and failing, because I couldn't have made those 2 pictures line up either. I put the second commander's jaw through its own brain and burned the third against a rock wall and told the survivors to fall back and heal. I lost count somewhere around 9. 9 red-armored commanders, one after another, and here is the thing I understood while I was doing it, the thing that ties this whole story into one knot. I wasn't winning with the furnace or the flame or the A-rank spear. I was winning with the perfection-level basic body forging method. Every strike concise, nothing wasted, my body doing exactly and only what the moment required, because I'd ground the most boring art in the world 1,000 times until it became the way I move. The fanciest weapons I owned were riding on top of the plainest thing I'd ever learned. They always had been. Then the rift tore itself wide open, and something reached through that even I couldn't touch. A claw, one claw, bigger than an entire commander, dark gold carapace and bone spurs, and it ripped the edge of the rift like wet paper. A golden armor grand commander, the equal of a human innate martial master, level 40 and above, The absolute ceiling of what a level 2 rift is supposed to be able to hold, and clearly more than it could. The top martial masters of 2 cities hammered that claw together and left nothing but shallow white scratches. It began to squeeze through, and every person in that valley understood that if it fully arrived, there would be no valley, and no Red River, and no Yingang, and no sleeping apartment 45 kilometers away with 2 proud people in it. And then a line of pure white sword light came out of the far dark and took the claw off at the wrist. An innate martial master descended out of the night in a white robe, pale-faced, breathing harder than a man that strong should, and I knew him. Guo Yan's proctor from the joint exam, the one who'd stopped me before I could follow up on her broken arm. Her 4th senior brother. In truth, Grandmaster Chen Qiang's first disciple, an innate master named Gu Fan, sent by his master to hold this unstable rift personally. He severed the claw, sealed the tear back down with runes of sword kai, and it cost him visibly. This was heavy work even for him. Then his clear, sharp eyes found me across the ruined valley, and someone told him who I was, and he gave me the briefest look and the smallest words. "The Foundation has done a good job," he said. "I didn't expect there to be such a person among Junior Sisters' peers." From a man who could take an innate tear claw off with one cut, 4 words of that were a medal. I'll take it out and look at it sometimes. But he'd already turned back to the rift, and the sun was starting to come up, and that was when I finally had time to look at what the night had actually cost. Daylight is honest in a way the dark isn't. It showed me the whole valley, the twisted barricades, the scorched ground, the beast corpses, and among them, under white sheets, the people. A garrison regiment rolled in to take over, medics and engineers and recovery crews and machines to re-anchor the rift, the official order arriving to hold ground that had already been paid for. I put my spear away and walked the line looking for my team. I found Gao Hai sitting on a rock while a medic stitched an arm laid open to the bone. He didn't make a sound through it. He saw me and tried to grin, which pulled at the cut on his face, and he said in a flat voice that had blood in every word, "Captain Tan, it's good you're all right." Then he told me. The younger of the 2 brothers who fought with knives, the quiet one whose knife work was so steady, gone. Old He, out of arrows, had picked up a blade and lost an arm keeping it. Zhu Gang's spine, and a future that was going to be hard now. And of my 3 rookies, the 3 I'd thrown myself in front of one of them, a kid named Chen Yu, hadn't made it through the night after all. "If it weren't for you," Gao Hai said, "none of this team would be alive. I, Gao Hai, owe you my life." I told him holding the line was everyone's work, and I put my hand on his good shoulder, and I didn't say anything else because there wasn't anything else that wasn't a lie. I remembered the quiet brother's steady knife. I remembered Chen Yu gripping his weapon too tight on his first real night, pale, and doing it anyway. I found Teacher Lai alive. 2 ribs broken, Zhu lay kneeling over him cleaning a wound while her own arm sat in a sling, the 2 of them bickering about it like an old married couple, which is how I knew they'd both live. He's face lit up when he saw me whole. "You little rascal," he said, and there was shock in it and pride, so much pride it embarrassed both of us. "I heard you took all 5 commanders at B3 yourself, and B1, and C2. Good grief, you killed more of those things in one night than I've seen in my whole life." He grabbed my arm with his good hand. "Without you, a lot more of us would be under those sheets." And then, quieter, the thing a teacher waits his whole career to earn the right to say. "Someday, kid, I'm going to get to point at you and tell people that one was my student." Wen Jing gave me a single nod across the wreckage, cool as ever, and there was nothing detached in it anymore. Gu Fan spoke to all of us before he left, and he told us the truth the bulletins hadn't. This rift wasn't an accident. Somewhere far above us, at a place called the Xuanyu Rift, his master Grandmaster Chen Qiang is holding down a beast king that wants into our world, and that beast king had reached out and torn this second wound in the sky as a diversion, to split the Federation's attention and open a second front. Everything we'd bled for that night was one small feint in a much larger, much crueler war, and if we hadn't held if that Grand Commander had fully arrived, Red River and Yingang would both be gone. "The dead are gone," he said, "but their spirit remains, and the living should know that tonight was not chance." Then he was gone, back to a higher and worse battlefield, and left us to count. The count was bad. Over 400 martial artists fought that night. 47 died, 9 of them martial masters. 59 crippled. In quiet, peaceful cities like ours, where most people go their whole lives without seeing a star beast, losing that many of your defenders in one night is a wound that doesn't close for a generation, and it happened because the commander-class beasts were more than anyone planned for. I stood and listened to the cold numbers, and I made myself hear them as what they were, not statistics. Gao Hai's arm. Chen Yu's grip, the steady brother's knife. 47 people who had families asleep somewhere the way mine were. I refused the ride back. I slung my spear and I walked down the mountain alone at a sunset the color of everything I'd just seen, and I let it all catch up to me on the way, the relief of being alive braided so tight to the weight of who wasn't that I couldn't pull them apart. And somewhere on that road I understood, finally and completely, what the top of this thing was actually for. Not levels, not leaderboards, not beating a boy from a television. The road ahead of me held a heavier responsibility and a crueler war and things I could not yet imagine, and the whole point of climbing it was to get strong enough and high enough to stand between all of that and the people sleeping behind me. So I could be the one under the sheets instead of them. So my mother never has to learn what a commander is. I got home at 2 in the morning and let myself in quiet as a thief. My dad's snoring still going. Their door still closed. Safe. I rolled my ruined, blackened clothes into the bottom of my bag to get rid of somewhere they'd never see, stood under hot water until the night ran off me, and sat down to cultivate, because a life-and-death fight sharpens the spirit like nothing else, and I wasn't about to waste it. In the morning, my mom asked why I looked so pale, and I told her I was just tired, and I ate her congee, and I flew back to school with a lie tucked next to the 2 empty potion vials in my heart, because some things you carry so the people you love don't have to. 3 days later, in my cultivation room, I picked up my old wind-stabilizing spear, the cheap C-rank legacy I'd bought as a broke kid for 1,000 coins, the first weapon that was ever mine, and I took the army-stabilizing stance, and the fog just lifted, my perfection-level foundation and the spear fused, and I could feel the power rise from the soles of my feet all the way to the tip, one unbroken line, and I did 100 clean cultivates, and the bell rang, and this epiphany didn't bring me fragments. It brought the whole meaning. Immovable as the mountain, fierce as fire, and the long, coiling thread of silk-reeling force between them, all one thing, all always one thing. Wind-stabilizing spear, perfection. I wasn't learning the art anymore. I was using it to say what I meant. The difference between those two is the difference between the boy who bought it and the man holding it, and the only thing that had changed in between was the man. Then the merit settlement came through, cold data on a screen. 9 confirmed red-armored commanders, 37 regular beasts, no ground lost. 700 federal merit points, more than veteran martial masters twice my age had earned that night. I looked at the number and felt nothing much. I knew what it had cost. A number can't hold that. And then, half a month into a quiet stretch of just getting stronger, my battle net pinged with a private request I did not expect, from 2 figures standing in a virtual meeting room. A calm upperclassman from Blackstone who called himself Senior Chen, and a cold-voiced AI in a red dress. They'd come to invite me into something called Red Star, a loose, secret club that has existed for 12 years entirely on BattleNet. No headquarters, invitation only, that recruits nothing but the Federation's finest under 25. 287 members. Networking, rare intelligence, high-value missions, and the kind of trust that a brutal admission filter buys you. Members come and go freely, and you can only get in if an existing member recommends you. Someone had recommended me, 3 months ago, right after the youth tournament. Her name was Liu Xin, the girl who had drawn her sword exactly once and put me outside the arena before I saw the cut. Sister One, they called her, the fighter nobody our age could take a single blow from, the one who won the whole tournament without needing a second strike. She had watched a first year get erased by her own hand, and she had gone home and put his name forward. The admission test was a duel. In a simulated coliseum stood 9 silver pedestals, and on each one floated the battle phantom of a Red Star member, recorded before they'd reached level 35, and I could choose any one of them to fight, scaled to my own level. 8 of the 9 I didn't recognize. I recognized the 9th from across the room, the tall, slender figure, the ponytail, the hand resting at the side as if holding an invisible sword. Senior Chen started to explain that I could pick whichever felt safest, that there was no shame in. I was already walking. Past 8 phantoms I didn't know, straight to the one I did, the one holding a sword that had once ended me in a single motion I'd been turning over in my head every day since. I stopped 5 meters from Liu Xin's phantom. I choose this one, and I stepped into the sensing area. Because the last time she drew that sword, I never even saw it, and I have spent a lot of nights since then doing my homework. Ask me again after this fight how it goes. Right now, all I know is that a delivery driver's kid who couldn't move a needle off 8.6 is standing across from the fastest knife in the world, on purpose, grinning, and for the first time in my life, I can't wait to find out how far the mountain has grown.